Welcome to the Westwood Planning Board meeting. In the absence of our chair, Trevor Lovenstein, Dave Atkins, will be chairing tonight's meeting. All meetings are recorded by Westwood Media Center, and if there's anyone else in the audience who would like to record the meeting, please identify yourself so the audience is aware. As a reminder, please turn off your cell phone ringers. The agenda is available at the back of the room. The meeting will follow the order on the agenda. The meeting will be civil, and all people will be treated respectfully. The format is that when an item is called, the applicant will come to the platform, present, and then the staff may have comments, board members will ask questions, may have comments, and then we'll proceed to, the public will be given an opportunity to comment. When it's time for the public comment period, the chairman will call those wishing to speak to the podium. Once at the podium, please identify yourself by stating your name and address for the record. All comments and questions shall be directed through the chair. All people will be given the opportunity to speak, but in the interest of time and fairness, repetitive or off-topic comments may be cut short. And I just want to reemphasize how important it is for people to come to the podium and use the microphone so that your comments will be recorded on Westwood Media so that people can see the full meeting. So with that, I would ask Abby if are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
So no changes to the agenda. We will move to the first item on the agenda, which is Wegmans Food Market at University Station, a request to amend the 2016 project-specific signage condition related to a one-year extension for cart corral signs.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Hesley, and I'm the Service Area Manager at Westwood Wegmans, and I thank you all very much for your time this evening. I'm here in place of our store manager, Dave Orlovsky, requesting the extension on the permit to use the reusable shopping bag signage that we would have in our cart corrals. The sign is available here in the front row for you to see. I have brought packets with some photos. I know Abby has some photos as well that she said she would show for us that show the signage in use and show how it doesn't create an obstruction in the parking lot. It's not visible from the road, and we believe that it is doing the right thing for our customers and the community in enforcing and asking folks to use those reusable shopping bags to cut down on the amount of plastic bags consumed in the store on a daily basis. Last Friday, Dave and I had the opportunity to pull some numbers and to show that our customer count is still continuing to increase. And right now it is a 6% increase year to date over last year, which is tens of thousands of customers. So as the construction continues in the University Station Avenue, we believe that this is still a important piece of information for our customers so that they continue to use those reusable bags.
Thank you. Do you have any staff comments?
I would just add that if you recall, I know Brian wasn't here last year when you approved this, but you had permitted these signs with the condition that the applicant could apply for a one-year additional extension if submitted prior to September 1st. So they're here now asking you to amend that condition to still allow me to grant that one-year approval within a little bit of a grace period, as this was received a few days after, about a week after that September 1st deadline.
So if the signs were moved, there'd be nothing else there, right?
Correct, yes.
And I mean, do you find them effective? Like, do you think you have any evidence that people are?
If I may share a story, I was actually in the parking lot a few weekends ago, assisting our Helping Hands employees that we have in the parking lot, gathering carts and things of such. A customer had exited her car, started walking towards the store, passed one of those signs, said, "Oh my goodness, I need my shopping bags," and turned around and walked back. Do I believe that it's each and every customer we're touching with that? No, but do I believe that is it effective? Yes, because it is that reminder as they're crossing towards the store, as they are on all the cart corrals closest to the store there, that it is a reminder to folks to use those bags.
Yeah, I think this type of signage is important. The more residents and neighbors and everybody start using these bags, the less paper or plastic. A lot of these things just end up getting thrown away. Mm-hmm. I was wondering how many of these carts are there in the parking lot?
In the cart corral, we have If I may just flip to my page one moment.
I believe there is a total of 10 that were approved last year.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any other questions.
Any other board member questions?
No questions. I'd just like to say it's a noble cause. I agree with it. There's a lot of thoughts I have about how I would like the general public to act. If I put signs up for everything I wanted, I'd wallpaper the world with signs. We had an idea about signage going into the development of the university station, and this is outside of that realm. In my opinion, you either use them or you don't. I liked your antidote, but she had them in the car, which is the difference, whereas the people who don't use them don't have them in the car, and they just don't use them. That's how I feel about it. Like I say, it's a noble cause, but it's outside the realm of our signage plan. That's it, thank you.
Is there anyone from the public wishing to comment? Mr. Rafsky, do you want?
For the record, Steve Rafsky, 646 Canton Street. It's not what I'm here for tonight, but I would just like to point out that a couple of things. We went out of our way, and for the people who don't know, I still am associate mayor of the planning board. I'm not here in that regard, and I was on the planning board and economic development during the whole project development. We went out of our way as a town to say we'd have a lot of flexibility in signage in this area. As we were promoting this area, our hope was that we would always give a lot of preference to what business owners said they need to run their businesses. And I know from what I've heard from Wegmans before, this is something they do everywhere. And it's not, I think, contrary to what we had said early on, that we wanted to be flexible. That's why we have very special wording in the zoning article about signage here. And the last thing I will say is I, to this day, receive many phone calls from residents. For some reason, they still want to call me with their opinions on University Station. Not one time have I ever had one person make one comment about any signage in University Station. And I would encourage the board that if you're not getting phone calls and hearing those complaints, and I don't think they're out there, then we ought to give a little preference to what a business owner wants. And that's all I would like to say.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. So I
Abby,
think-
excuse me, what was our decision last year this time?
So it was July 2016, you approved what is called an alternative project, specific alternative sign package, which included these signs. And you had placed a condition that this be removed or revisited in this 1 year time frame. The idea was, because these signs didn't specifically fall within the boundaries of the sign regulations in the University Ave mixed use overlay district, but you have that flexibility. But you would put in this 1 year condition with the idea of thinking that would create enough time for people to develop the habit of bringing the reusable bag signs. So you kind of left it open to revisit it in 1 year, but you had an end date because you wanted to limit the overall amount of signage at University Station.
Okay. And as far as you know, nothing has changed in that regard? The conditions have not changed. Our regulations or our sign package has not changed.
Nope, only this was to follow up within it, this
Okay.
year.
So as I recall, I did have some objections to some of the signs in University Station, too many signs, and particularly the ones that weren't attached to something. And so certainly these were not any of the signs that I had any problems with. these are fine, and I think we reached a good conclusion last time to let them do it for 1 year, and I see no problem with having it go for another year.
Are we being asked to renew it for another year or make it
Or,
permanent?
I think you're being asked to amend that condition to allow me to grant that administrative approval for the 1-year extension.
Year
So,
over year?
yeah. So it would be until September 1st, 2018.
Yeah, I'm for anything that's going to help the environment like that. I mean, a lot of this stuff just comes with continuous education. So for me, for a 1-year extension, this seems quite reasonable. I know it took me a couple years to get in the habit of bringing bags. I just keep 10 in my car at all times.
So I think we would need a
Yeah, so
motion.
I guess in keeping with, with the original motion, the original decision that we had, then I'll make a motion that we give the town planner the authority to renew for 1 year till September 1st, 2018, the ability to keep these signs on these, what do they call them, card stations.
I second the motion.
We have any input from the general public?
We did.
We did.
Yeah, we did.
So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? It's unanimous. It's approved.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. The second item on the agenda, 247 Station Drive, formerly known as 1 NSTAR Way. NSTAR Electric Eversource Energy, an environmental impact design review public hearing proposal for ground-mounted solar canopies over parking areas.
And Steve, if you'd like to use this clicker,
I would, sure.
okay. You can just press the buttons, go back and forth.
Okay.
It doesn't even have to be pointed at the screen. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Actor, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Steve Wea. I'm with Weston and Sampson Engineers. I'm here tonight on behalf of Eversource Energy, represented by Amy Voisin Shea, and Mike Singer with Brightfields Development, who's a program manager with this project. I'm just going to set my timer for preference of time. I know you have a packed agenda, just to try and keep this brief. We have before you an application that was filed on August 17th for a special permit for a solar canopy project. With that was the application fee, the cover letter that described the project, and a set of stamped plans. We've had staff review subsequent to that submittal, and were provided some feedback and requested to submit some additional information. And on September 1st, we filed a set of updated civil design plans that were stamped by Weston and Sampson as a civil engineer, some structural plans that gave the nature of the solar canopies, a lighting design plan by RAB. There were some lighting specifications, some photo simulations driven from around the neighborhood and at different vantage points to give you the nature and character of what this project might look like when it's completed. A bit of a narrative, and then a couple of waivers that we had requested pursuant to the bylaw that was adopted this past May, I think. Again, this is it used to be 1 NSTAR Way. It's a regional office. When Eversource and NSTAR merged, it used to be the old NSTAR headquarters. It's now a regional service center, and the address is 24/7 Station Drive now. There is a proposal for 18 solar parking canopies with a total capacity of 2.3 megawatts or 2,300 kilowatts DC. We estimate the annual output at about 2.5 million kilowatt hours. To give you an idea, this is part of Eversource's renewable portfolio standard obligations. They have a larger project to build 62 megawatts across the Commonwealth to meet this obligation. To give you an idea, the RPS goals, I think, for 2017 is 12% of their load has to be met by renewable, and that grows 1% every year. and 2.86% of that is in the solar carve-out. So their obligation is somewhere on the order of 213 million kilowatt hours of electricity that they have to provide, according to the state of Massachusetts and the Department of Energy Resources. This application and this presentation, and I apologize, it was prepared for the dual purpose of planning and zoning. So there's some slides here that relate to some zoning issues in terms of what the social, traffic, adequacy of the utilities, public services, neighborhood character, impacts to the environment, and this was included in the package that we filed. So we believe that the structures are in harmony with the general purpose and intent of this facility. 24/7 Station Drive is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service center that Eversource runs to maintain the reliability standards that they have to provide electricity to their customers here in Massachusetts. I think it's a 99.998% availability goal and requirement that they have. And so this is a 24-hour manned station. It's a call center. It's also used as a muster point in case of an emergency. If there was a storm coming, contractors may come and muster there to be deployed out, to other parts of their territory that need to be upgraded or repaired in the event of a storm or an outage. So the decision factors outlined in 7.3.9 maximize the volume of cut and fill, the number of removed trees, 6 inches in diameter or less. Some of these solar canopies are being placed at basically over existing parking spaces. And so there are some trees in the islands that are physically in the way that we're asking permission and as part of this permit to remove and replace with some other in-kind landscaping that would enhance and protect and buffer the site from the neighbors. Again, it's going to be constructed entirely within the disturbed parking lot areas. There's no additional impervious area that's going to be created. There's no changes in peak flow runoff volumes. There's no changes to the traffic patterns. We did do a accessibility for the largest fire truck that might respond to an event there to make sure that the turning radiuses and the clearances were going to be maintained for those emergency vehicles. And we were happy to report at the late hour that they did a quick review of that and found that it was not going to be a problem with their equipment. We want to minimize obstruction and scenic views from publicly accessible locations. You'll see in the drive around, we did a walk around survey. I did it to take some pictures and some photo simulations that you see here on the board. Each one of those little yellow headlights represents a location where we're facing to simulate what this project is going to look like. It doesn't change, we think, any of the scenic views from these locations. Will they be seen? Yes, but they'll be pretty small and sort of in nature and character with the existing facility that's there. We don't think there's going to be any glares from headlights or from the panels themselves. It's not a departure from the nature or character of the area. Minimize contamination of groundwater. We did do a pre-characterization so that the contractor, when it was excavating these soils for the pile foundations, to which there are 118 piles that are 3 feet in diameter, and they extend down between 11 and 15 feet in the ground to support structural steel columns and the steel assembly with the panels on top. This is a profile of one of the 3 canopy types. They're a dual tilt so that all of the rainwater sheds from one angle 1 degree and from the other 7 degrees. They're all in line with existing parking stalls as they are laid out today. And so this is a profile view of one of those. This would be a single-sided carport section, which I think there's only 1 or 2 of. And this is a typical footing detail that you would see with the cast-in-place concrete. The turning movement plan that we ran by the fire department included, and it's a little bit hard to see, and I apologize for this, but there are some motions and movements on these plans that demonstrate their largest vehicle being able to access all areas, the 4 hydrants that surround the building, and all of the canopies that are there. They should be able to move around them and under them without any obstructions. And so this fades to another one showing some of the tighter turns within there, and one more. And again, I apologize, it's very slight when you look at these because of the scale, just to show the whole site. But this is an elevation view showing the fire truck with respect to the canopies in scale. So as far as visual landscaping for the trees that we propose to have to remove to get them out of the way of construction, these are a variety of species that the landscape architect, in consultation with Abigail about what species would be appropriate, if it needs to be a deciduous tree or an evergreen that might be lower in nature. If a tree is on the north side and it won't provide any obstruction physically to the construction, we're amenable to leaving all trees that we possibly can. But these are the proposed replacements. And so this plan, and again, I apologize that the scale is a little tough to see, but you can see where the canopies are proposed in the trees within those islands. So none of the landscape buffer that was originally installed with the development of this site in the early 2000s, I think it was built around 2000, 2001. None of those are going to be touched. Only ones that are interior to that would be removed, again, just for the sake of physical, obstruction with construction. And then this is showing where those potential replacement plants could be put in order to replace what's removed during construction. You may not be able to see this, but there are red X's on the trees that we believe that the contractor walked around and marked up each light that would have to come down if it was in the way, and each tree that would have to be removed. And so the light poles that are being replaced, in general, these are 25-foot tall light poles that would be replaced with under canopy lighting that's 14 feet average height underneath these canopies.
On the previous one, the red area is vegetation to be removed. What does that consist of? What's going to be there after the vegetation is removed?
So the vegetation that's to be removed, you'll see it, I think, in some of the photo simulations, but they're generally small deciduous trees. I would say that they're on average about 6 inches in diameter that were installed in the 2002, 2003 timeframe. When you look at this site with Google Earth, you see that they've gotten a little bit mature over the last 15 years, but they're not to the size or caliper of the trees that surround the buffer between this site and the residential areas north and west.
But you're referring to everything growing there, or just trees growing?
Just the trees that would be an obstruction to construction. If they're physically in the way of the canopy, they would have to be removed. And again, if there is a tree that's not in the way and it's on the north side that won't eventually grow up to shade these solar panels, then it would be left as well. And so in our application, we estimated between 50 and 60 trees might have to be removed. If you did an exact count based on the contractor's walkover of the site, it turned out to be 54 trees, and it could be plus or minus 1 or 2 either way. And whatever is removed, we're proposing to provide something in kind, either in a lower shrub that's appropriate, that might provide additional buffer between the residents and the parking lot, to supplement what was originally installed when the site was built. And again, this was put together by our landscape architects just as an example of where plants could go. Some of them were placed strategically to buffer the residences to the west. Some to perhaps, we had put some on the slope on the east side that you might hide the canopies from view down at University Station, but I'll show you what it might look like from down there. So this was the general, walkover when I had met with the town planner right after the application was filed. She immediately suggested that we go take some pictures and do some photo simulations. So I used to just map my walk or ride around where I canvassed the area and walked the residential streets that you see to take some pictures from the street side back towards the site. I visited the apartment complex that was built and went to the top. The manager brought me up to the 4th-story parking garage just to get a picture back to see if it was worthy of a simulation there. And then in and around the shopping areas where you might have a better vantage of the site. We took some photographs to use in the simulations that you see on this board here. This is a rendering overall of the site plan as it's proposed with the canopies. And those are the views that we took pictures of. A couple of them were done from the roof so that we could get a better vantage point and cover more of an area to give you a better feel for aesthetically what this might look like. And so as I walk around the site, this is a photograph that was not altered in any way. And if I might, if the laser pointer works, I'll just walk you around the site. We started here, and so you're looking here, looking north up at this series of canopies here. And that's what those canopies laid in would look like. The next site is looking down at the lower parking lot, and you see those two trees at the end of the island. If the parking canopy was to be installed there, those trees would come out to allow room for the canopy. This is from the front of the horseshoe-shaped building, looking at the north or the east, the west wing. And you see some of the trees there and what the canopy and some of the trees removed
Could you
would
point
look
out
like.
where that?
Sure.
So you're seeing the trees inside the...
That's right here, looking this way at this canopy. This is down from University Station. You see the facility up on top of the hill, and that's where the canopies are. And again, this is from this vantage point. This is from the roof of the building, looking generally to the southwest. And these are canopies 1 through 4 on the site plan. This is, again, from the roof, looking out over towards Blue Hill. And those are the canopies that would be visible from this vantage point. This is here along the north property boundary, and it's facing, to the west. And these are the canopies. If I go back to the picture, I think you can see the light pole that's in there. To give you an idea of scale, the canopies would be lower than the existing parking lot lamp posts, just to give you an idea. This is from John Hancock, the adjacent banking center that's just a little bit of a lower elevation from their parking lot, looking back up towards. And that's what the canopies might look like. And that's just my reminder. So this is the overall, a bird's eye view from a Google Earth type of view of what the project might look like. And so with that, I would conclude and open the floor to questions.
So I'm curious about the 24-hour lighting. So it's not currently 24-hour.
It is.
Or
It is currently 24. And so, yeah, I should have addressed that. We did ask for a waiver to the lighting standard, but only for the one aspect, and that was for the duration of which the lighting is on. As I had mentioned earlier, this is a 24-hour call center, so there are people there 24 hours a day manning phones in cases of outages and emergencies and monitoring, their grid, basically.
But I mean, like right now, before construction, it's currently lit 24
It's
hours?
lit
It's not a
24.
change to that?
There's no change proposed to that.
Well, when we originally granted this permit, we didn't have anything in our bylaws about hours of lighting.
That's
And
correct.
we didn't, in our decision, we didn't say anything about hours of lighting because it was a 24-hour facility.
Not to my knowledge. I do have the decision that Abby sent, but I don't remember there being a provision about the lighting.
So since that
Right.
time, we have put it in our bylaw.
Right, just this past May, you updated the zoning to include this provision that the lighting had to be turned off an hour after the close of business, or unless
Did you have that section
specified.
over there?
6412, I believe it is.
Approximately how many people are in this call center, say at midnight?
I think we produced 25 people working there.
So would you need the entire parking lot lit, 25 people?
It's more of an emergency response issue. They might have random contractors show up with trucks and they don't know, way to go in and turn off the lights for each canopy. So it's just more of a safety issue for the whole company as a whole. And you can't really tell where somebody's gonna park. Somebody might like to park far away because they got a new truck, and somebody wants to park close. So it's one of those. It's a safety issue on the project for us.
They're on photo cells. I know that they come on, at sunset and go off at sunrise. I talked to the maintenance folks there when they gave me access to the roof. I asked them in the time that they had been there, had they ever received any complaints about the lighting, and they weren't aware of any. And I know that's informal, but I've just passed that along.
Could you kind of show the existing, so this is all on the inside of the diagram, so the canopies, but the existing lighting that's in the rest of the parking lot that's on 24 hours, is that spread
There
out
is a
all-
sheet in your packet that is an existing lighting plan that should show all of the existing light poles. And again, not all of the poles are coming down as a result of this project. Only the ones that are physically in the way of the canopies, and those will have lights installed underneath them to provide comparable lighting for the task of being a parking lot. I think it's 1 foot candle or 1 lumen underneath the canopy. And there is a lighting survey that will show what the light levels are as you move away from those canopy structures. And within 20 feet of the structures, it drops to a half of a foot candle, and then 0 by the time that you get to the edge of the property, for sure. So the light should be less than what you see now.
I think the lighting problem has been over the years, not the parking lot itself, but the lights from the windows. And people used to comment that the lights were on all night in the building. Why are they wasting this electricity, leaving the lights on all night? And the reason is that you do have a 24-hour call center there.
Yeah.
However, for a long time, lights were left on all sides of the building, not just where the call center was. And the other problem was the call center was located on the side of the building towards the neighborhood. So those are the lights that will be left on all the time. I know it's a lot to ask to have the call center on the other side of the building, which is the prime executive offices. They have the view of Great Blue Hill, and the call center was put on the other side of the building. But that did affect the neighbors because they were the ones that would see those lights. So that problem, does that continue to this day, Steve?
Actually, as a direct butter where the lights are.
But see how on a different angle from those. It's more to Hemlock. Those people in Hemlock Drive.
I don't think you see it at all.
Okay.
But that's really not
Yeah.
major.
So I don't. Yeah. I'm looking. I think we can waive any lighting standards. I'm looking for we're allowed to waive that.
Right. It's section 6412, with the exception of security lighting. So you would want to identify it as security
So we have to
lighting.
identify all the lighting in the parking lot as security lighting? Is that the way to do that?
If you are considering granting the request for the lights to remain on for 24 hours, I mean, I would recommend only the lights that really are needed to be on, maybe closest to where those employees will be parking. Since this is one of the first applications you're getting under this new bylaw, you specifically added this provision in to protect glare from the residential neighbors. So although the lighting plan complies with your zoning, it's the hours that's important here.
And I think that we're amenable to helping to address that through the landscaping. I think that we were shared some photographs of where there might be some gaps between the existing trees that were planted with the original construction. And so those have grown. There's some white pines, I think, that have grown quite healthy, but there's some lower limbs that there's a gap. And I think that if we plant some lower, evergreen type of foliage to fill in and provide a more dense, that would obscure some of the view of not only the canopies, but the lightings from the building.
Well, we'll have to get into this more in detail, but there are places where the canopy lighting will not cover the rest of the parking lot. And I'm not sure, it wasn't obvious from the diagrams that you gave us where the lighting would have to remain in order to light those areas. In other words, just simply removing the lighting from where the canopies are does not necessarily produce a properly lit area, because well, for instance, at the end, there's on the northern parking lot, the canopy extends over a double row, but then there's a single row along the edge. According to your lighting diagrams, the light would not reach to that row of parking spaces. So the question is, will there still be lights there along the edge, pole lights?
Yeah.
And I don't know if there are, because it's
Right.
hard to read. The diagram is very small.
Sure.
If those would remain and they'd be adequate. The problem with the lighting diagram you gave us is it shows the light from the canopies itself. It does not show the combined lighting from the canopies and any remaining lights.
So
we still
there
don't
is
know
there is
how
an
they-
existing lighting plan of what the existing lighting, and there's a model in the set. If I could direct you to the plan set.
Sure. But is there a combined?
So there isn't a
Building
combined.
light.
That's a good question. And so no, there's a lighting plan of existing on sheet C4 that shows what the existing parking lot lighting looks like. And then there was a model of what just the canopy lighting. The vendor that's supplying the fixtures ran a model only based on what the replacement fixtures would look like. And again, it's more to provide evidence that the lighting levels beneath the canopies are going to be appropriate. The light that doesn't reach underneath there from the poles that are removed, or from the poles that are left behind that are taller, that will no longer shed light underneath there. There's 23 light poles, I think, that are shown to come out, and 122 light fixtures that will be installed up underneath the canopy.
So the requirement to the contractor in doing the installation is that there needs to be a minimum, at least 1 foot candle.
I'm sorry, sir, could you approach the microphone, please, for the recording purposes? Thank you.
Sorry, Mike Singer, I'm the project manager doing all the canopy projects for Eversource under the DPU program, or the DOER program. So the way the canopy design is structured is that there'll be LED light fixtures underneath the canopies, lighting all the parking spaces below them, and then the requirement is to do any augmentation to the lighting plan to keep the existing lighting pattern outside of the canopies, beyond the footprint of the canopies, such that safety and lighting levels are maintained in accordance with the town's requirements, but also to maintain existing conditions. So
Right.
they may have to provide some, instead of 1 foot candle, which is their specification underneath the canopy, they may have to provide 2 to make sure that the spread meets the existing conditions, but still complies with the property line limits that are in the town's bylaws. So,
You mean you're gonna increase the light under the canopy and try to get it?
in certain cases, or they may put some exterior fixtures on the canopies to make sure that there's adequate lighting both under the canopy
Yeah,
and
well,
in
given
the
it's
adjacent
LED
areas.
lighting, I don't think that's gonna work. That you just can't make the lights brighter and expect it to shed the light further.
And if they have to put additional
Yeah,
if
'cause
they have
LED
to put
lighting
additional
is-
fixtures.
LED lighting is very clearly defined.
Yeah.
So just increasing it to 2-foot candles, it doesn't mean it's going to cover the spaces beyond. So, but we really need, we need a plan before we can approve anything of exactly what's gonna happen. So that includes any of these new light fixtures. So what we really need is, well, it's, what light fixtures are going to stay, what ones have to be added, and then we need an overall lighting design that shows both from the canopies and the lights that remained and then the lights that are added, what the overall lighting would be. I mean, and what you gave us, a few sections of the parking lot, they didn't even, because they weren't near the canopies, doesn't show anything. So we need to.
Yeah, that would go back to the existing conditions
So we
plan.
need to get the whole complete lighting diagram for that.
Understood?
Yeah, because I'm just looking at that, I can see in the north parking lot, that last row of parking spaces would not be lit. It would be way less than the minimum.
But wouldn't there be existing pole lights?
I'm looking
Yeah.
at the original plan and I don't see them there. Apparently the ones that are to be removed that were in the middle are the ones that lit those spaces. So if those are removed, there wouldn't be any lighting there.
So the requirement to our contractors is to maintain those. So whatever they'll have to do in terms of under
Yeah,
canopy
but
lighting to
we
provide
can't-
that.
Yeah, so obviously there'll be some new lighting, but we need to see that. We need to see exactly what that would be.
Okay.
And
I
we
think-
can't approve something which just says, the lighting, you're gonna do the lighting
In accordance with
with the plan, but, we need to see every single light pole where it's going to be, and we need the lighting plan that shows what the exact, amount of lighting would be on every square foot of the parking lot as a result of all those light fixtures.
Well, okay, so I think that we're close. We have most of what you've asked for already presented here. The only thing that, again, I would concede that we didn't do is a combined existing, what's gonna remain with the proposed. But I think that the light levels that are provided here, and I recognize that the prints at this scale are hard to read, but the electronic copies would allow you to zoom in and see and read every number.
They get pretty
that's on.
fuzzy when you start to
Right, sure.
magnify them, so that's a problem.
Yeah, if you zoom,
Possible- Can we get at least a couple of copies of a large plan?
yeah,
That'd
the
be the
electronic
size one.
copies, and I think we provided you electronics that show you down to the
They
crystal
do?
clear.
It's on a
They are
5-foot
clear.
grid
Yeah.
covering the
Okay.
entire parking lot.
Yeah, I think, so I'm imagining, another way to think of this is if you took away the canopy lighting, then what I'm imagining is that you have it'd be like a donut of light because of the existing areas of the parking lot that aren't changing, right? Those will still be lit 24 hours.
Correct.
So you're saying it's going to balance out and it'll maybe even be less overall light, but yeah, we need to see that more clearly, I think.
Yeah.
On your
Again-
existing-
Again, Mr. Chairman, I would concede that the details that you're looking for are on these plans. The light levels are there for the existing light poles and what the proposed condition is over every square foot of parking lot. And I'm saying this only because I'm not sure I could submit to you anything that's drastically different. What you're gonna get back from us, if you tasked us with doing that, is something that looks very similar to what you have. And you really have to zoom in on the electronic file to see that 5-foot by 5-foot grid, but you'll read the lumen levels at every square foot across that parking lot. And they'll be essentially the same as what they're on the existing plan or
So-
the proposed lighting plan.
So page C4, I believe I can see locations of light poles. It's not the lighting plan, but
Right.
the lighting plan only covers the canopy
The
area.
canopy area, exactly. Doesn't combine with parking lot lights.
Yeah, no, right. The only thing we haven't done was to combine this model with the other one that's in there. Right.
We need to see the values with those combined.
Okay.
On that C4, what do the black lines represent?
So those lines, I think, are 1-foot candle line or 5-foot candle line. And I apologize, but I can't read them at this scale either.
Yeah.
You know. But if I had the large set of plans that we filed, we could pluck that off, and generally, it's one of the major contours of luminance. I think there's a
Two.
half, a one.
Up to 3 and 4,
Yeah.
directly underneath the lights. Yeah, I'm looking at it, it's the 1 foot candle and 3
So
foot candle.
all of these are going to be the 55 watt units
Yes, sir.
they're using throughout?
Yes, everything underneath the canopies.
Is this RAB PRT 55N?
Yeah, I mean, you can see right here, I'm looking at, it's not marked separately, but I'm looking here, there's a whole section here where the numbers just stop, which is, but you still have parking spaces. And then I have to go to the other diagram, the existing, to see if there are any light poles there and try to figure out. So we need those combined, so we can see that.
Steve, are you concerned about the too much or too little light, or just not balanced, or?
Yeah, too little, yeah, too little. And then, yeah, I don't think we're gonna have a problem with too, as long as you're careful, if there's any extra lighting needed, you may have to tone it down from what you would normally need it, because it wouldn't be as large an area from what
Sure.
you're trying to light now. So we wanna make sure if you have to put in new poles, they probably won't have to be as tall, or, I don't know.
Yeah, I think generally the way when you do a series of parking lots, what that allows you to do is use the canopy structures to put an ancillary fixture on the side of. So we would be.
So you wouldn't be necessarily putting,
No.
you would just mount an extra one near the edge of the fixture.
That's exactly it. That's what I was trying to allude to, which is that you're using the existing structures, and so opposed to putting them straight down the middle, you may light the edges to make sure there's enough light spilling out to keep the minimums. And that's what our specification is.
Okay.
That's what our requirement is, and that's why you see two different plans.
Right.
The plans shown on C8 is the proposed lighting that will be coming from the canopies, the minimum. And then
you'll see the way that the lighting designer, if you look at the spacing of how far apart those fixtures are, the one that's on the northwest corner, there's that's canopy number 1. If you look at canopy number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you'll notice at the end of it, there's a light that's actually closer together, and that was put in there to make sure that you got the appropriate light levels. Given the overall length of the canopy, you had to get one extra fixture in there, and so you'll see there's just instead of maybe 25 feet between each light fixture, there's
12.
20 or 12,
Yeah.
right?
So essentially what you'll see here is that the void areas outside would be overlaid on the existing conditions plan, and that's the sum total of that.
But we need to see one plan that shows
we can
that.
we can work to put that in there.
All right, so, yeah, if you are putting the long one at the north parking lot, so you're saying would need another set of lights at the edge to.
No, we said you'll see on the middle canopy, or the
Number 6.
number 6, working your way down from the top.
Where are you now?
Let's see.
On C8.
Yeah.
So you'll see on this canopy, they've thrown us an extra
Oh, that's
light
for
in
the
at
end,
the
right,
end,
yeah, for the
just
end.
to give you that extra, to
Right.
give you
Oh,
the
Yeah,
additional.
but I don't think you have enough lighting right on this edge here, because they generally light,
I
you know,
think
you see
we're
the
at-
red line there. I
Yeah.
think the light would fall, would be too low here, so how do you light that area?
That is the lower parking lot.
Yeah, the northern parking, the
That's
lower one.
actually, I think that's
Those-
beyond the
those-
spaces, but
No, the spaces, see, the spaces are,
I'll have to blow it up.
Yeah.
I don't know what the
can-
existing condition plan is there. Hold on.
yeah, go back, you had to be past a few.
So right now.
Go back to where the picture is.
Right now, the existing condition
Go back to
along
one of the pictures.
the outside is.
Keep going. Keep going. Oh, one more. Right there, the one you just passed.
This
So
one?
right now, the edge
No.
of that,
There, that one. That one.
Yeah, so-
Okay, so if you put lights in the middle there, that's not gonna reach those spaces at the end probably.
Right now, since that's where the property line is, right now, this is the existing lighting conditions right there now. So that's 0.3, 0.4 foot candles along the edge of that parking lot right now. Sorry.
Right, so there's,
So we should be matching that with what's there now.
all right, but
Again, we can put those two
Yeah.
plans together for you.
okay.
But the intent, the end result will be whatever is lit there now will be there in the future. So if
Okay.
it's point
I
two.
mean, these would be additive. I mean, if you took all these numbers and basically lay it on
Yeah,
top.
exactly.
You're not taking away.
We're not taking away anything. In some respects, under the canopies, we may be reducing certain areas, because right now what you have are high-intensity lights shining at 25 feet. So what you get is you get high-intensity lighting right at the base of that light pole, up to 3 or 4 foot candles. And the reason is because those lights are designed to diffuse out. Now what you'll see is actually in that exact spot, which will now be under a canopy, you will have much more even lighting under the canopy of around 1 foot candle, which is the specification, under all the canopies. So you'll actually have more even, less light under the canopies, but we'll make sure that the existing lighting conditions outside the canopies are maintained. So if you took Plan C8 and overlaid it on Plan C, someone's keeping up here, C4, I think, that is exactly what you will get. You will get the sum of those two plans.
Okay, but we need to see that together in order to verify that.
We will, and we would only respectfully request that we would be able to submit that prior to any start of construction or, and provide that it's
Yeah, well,
adequate.
see, we're approving plans, so we can't approve plans that don't exist. So we really need to see that.
Respectfully, I would only say that the plans exist in separation, but not in totality.
So it's still not clear what poles remain in areas where you don't have canopies. For instance, in the other side of that north parking area, and why are there no canopies in certain spots in that north area?
Why don't you go to the photo simulation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So-
In that north parking area, there's a sewer line and a sewer easement that runs right through the middle there that we could not build on. So you can see on the plan right here that there's a sewer line that runs right through, and there's an easement associated with it. So we've set the canopies back accordingly. Sorry to the public.
Abby,
Standing in front of us.
Did we have any other staff comments or any other?
You did receive a request from the fire department for turning templates. We did receive those just only a couple hours ago, but we did have the fire department review those, so they were, the fire department did respond that those,
These are just blown up copies
the-
of the turning radius.
that the
You can
project
see them.
as designed still allows access for the fire department.
The most important picture from the fire department, if you look at the last page, it shows the height relative of the truck of ladder 1 to the parking canopies. And then the lowest point of the parking canopy is 14 feet. The height of ladder 1 is 10.5. And this is done for dual purposes. Eversource's mandate is that this site has to be fully functional for high-tension trucks, line trucks, emergency relief trucks during disasters. And so that's why we designed it. It's the Mass DOT bridge height. And so we are higher than anything that you could put on a road. So from a turning radius, we're putting the canopies within existing islands or existing middles of drive aisles. So functionality of a truck should be unaffected, and that was what I think made the fire department.
And so that's 14 feet?
It's 14 feet to the lowest point of the canopy.
Is there, if there are no other board questions?
Well, we have to get to the trees, just the lighting.
A landscaping plan. Is there a landscaping plan in here? I noticed that I did see some markings of what we're coming down. Do you show where they're?
We've been working with Abby to come up with a condition that would be at least 50 trees, so at least equivalent to what we remove.
Yeah.
Mostly focused on the berm abutting the neighbors, and that we would work with the staff to develop that plan. Again, I think it's We've only thrown the word approximately in, only because we want to make sure that those 50 trees can survive there, and that would be up to a landscape architect and
Yeah,
to
of
the
course,
staff.
yeah.
So, Eversource is more than amenable to replacing everything that we take out. We just want to do it in a responsible way where the vegetation survives.
Right.
Oh, a few more questions. So right now you have, and you showed on the plans, there's a trailer sitting on the property, and it's actually on the plans, and there's another one. I'm not sure when I drove through whether I noticed it or not. What is that? Is that a permanent?
No, it just happened to be there on the date of the survey, and so the survey.
Is this a
Because it
video?
shows right there on the plan.
I'm sorry, do you mind if I?
There's actually the trailer from a tractor-trailer truck.
There's some furniture that Eversource has stored there. That's a temporary storage that they're going to be. That building is now multi-tenant, and so my understanding is that that was just being used for storage. We don't have any permanent trailers. During construction, we proposed to put some temporary construction trailers just to house personnel, but no.
Okay, because I saw it on the plans, and I said, okay, I don't want
I
any.
think it was picked, the reason it was on there was because it was picked up in the existing condition survey,
Uh-huh.
so.
All right, so, but there is a trailer there. Yeah, right where the plan shows it, so that's what
There
got me
is,
worried.
it's not permanent,
Alright.
it's temporarily there.
Now on the
A tractor trailer,
tractor trailer?
Yeah.
Yeah, just the trailer. On the eastern edge there, you show a double canopy, so half the canopy is just overhanging the slope.
yes.
And yet the light is in the middle, so you effectively, well, first of all, why double there and not single? You're just trying to get more?
You know, the goal here is to be efficient and try to generate as much power as we can. And the thought process is when your foundations are essentially the same, if you look at the moments on these things, and you're hanging out over, we met our setbacks, and we're just hanging out over the slope. And so just because it's not paved, we felt that it was an opportunity to provide more renewable energy from the same amount of earthwork and disturbance on the ground. So we're putting the same number of canopies, columns, we're putting in the same size footings, and we just felt that, listen, if we can generate more green energy from the same amount of work, it was a better
All right.
proposition.
But the light you show is still in the middle, so you're lighting up landscaping on the side of a hill. Should you move those further in?
Possibly, as long as it provides adequate lighting to.
Well, I mean,
I would only say as an individual, from a security point of view, I think everybody wants to make sure that there's enough lighting, and since these are LEDs, as you said, there's not a ton of spillover. We want to make sure that the depth of the parking spot just beyond it is lit as well.
but it's a steep hill, so you're really lighting the side of a steep hill.
That's possible, so.
Yeah, I think you need to, yeah, I think you need to take a look at that. And along that area also, I know from the original plans, there's supposed to be normal tree plantings along there, and only a couple of trees. I think over the years, either, and I sort of recall this was a problem, we never got the trees that we were supposed to get along there. And either of the ones that we did get, they've died or never been replaced. And then there's some, again, as you were showing in the area there, for undergrowth to be removed, they're just,
That's just a
other
we
things
would
have
just be
grown up
trimming there,
there. So, I say technically, there should have been trees there.
Right there.
So it's more than the actual 50, what did you say, 55 trees?
I think that the total number of trees that
Yeah.
we're removing, if you can, that, Steve, this one.
Yeah, you can see like
you can
1,
see
2,
what's
3,
there.
3 trees. That should have been a whole row of trees.
I can't speak to what was approved. I'm not familiar with what was approved in
Well,
the
I
original.
mean, look at the regulations. The regulations say, you know, so many trees so far apart, and somehow that didn't happen there. So I just wanted to point that out, that when we talked more about where some of these trees should go, that I think it's more than the number of trees, because those trees would have been there, and so they would be removed.
I'd like
So
to.
you're gonna move it down to like you're gonna leave the bushes, just the trees that are there.
Yeah.
And anything growing
There's
too
two
tall.
functions. If you want, can you move over to one of the ones that shows it in the islands? So, maybe 5 or 6. So, next one.
Yeah, but that's go back to that one.
okay.
You said you were going to remove the 2 trees at the end. Why are those trees incompatible with the, I noticed
So the only issue.
some of them go right to the edge of the islands, and then others go not quite as
So
far.
this one was clipped, this canopy is run short because of the sewer easement.
Mhm.
And those trees are proposed to be removed, only because they provide shading onto the solar canopies. So, at some point.
Oh, because they're to the south of the,
Yeah. So, again, we've tried to limit everything. Again, this is one of the few examples where they're outside of the canopies. If you go to one of the pictures that shows them inside the canopies, keep going, that one right there.
Mhm.
We're removing, obviously, these trees, we can't trim those down, even though they physically may fall under 14 feet. They're just gonna become a problem for the canopy, and they're gonna probably die off because of lack of sun. So we're taking this row of trees out, and then certain trees along the islands that would shade the photovoltaic cells.
okay, but they are marked on the other diagram. That's the one you showed us, by the way, that's the first time we've seen it. So we're seeing some of these things for the first time tonight.
Understood.
Doesn't give us enough time to really look at it closely.
I'd like to make sure we have time for any public comment on this as well, and then to see if we're going to take action or how we're going to go. So is there any public comment on this? Mr. Rafsky.
Speak here or there?
Podium,
Gotta speak
please.
Please approach the.
So, this is Steve Rafsky again, and I'll keep it short. First of all, I want to acknowledge that Abby McCabe did come out and walk the property, and appreciated that a lot. And for those of us on the westerly side of the project, as was already noted, landscaping was to be provided, a berm and landscaping was to be provided such that we would not see the parking lot. The residents really didn't want to see the building, but we agreed on at least not seeing the parking lot or structures thereof. And what has happened is that the plantings that were done that lived went high, so the plantings that were low are gone, which leaves a lot of voids. And what would result is that the neighbors on the westerly side, and I am speaking for my neighbors who aren't here, that we have all talked, would not see it. It would be not, we are not against the project. It would be very nice if there is a decision in favor to have a little more specificity on having plantings on the side where the voids are, and specifically language that would say that there would be sufficient landscaping provided so that at least from the first levels of any of the houses on the westerly side, that we would not see these structures, which would be consistent with what was done. I was just wondering if the applicant could respond to that, but not just say we'll do plantings where there are voids, but have a purpose and something to measure it by. Other than that, I have no other comments.
So when we originally did this, there was a big discussion about how much parking was needed, and there was a row of parking that we agreed that they would put in the basis for the lighting, and they would grass it over, and but it would be expandable if they needed more parking. So I think after all these years, we can safely say you don't need any more parking, and so that area should be permanently turned over to plantings. And I noticed that the footings for the lighting are still there, and they probably be removed. And is that the spot where, does that correspond with the spot where you want additional plantings? Because there are two sections. There are two sections. Is that the one where, section along where it's parallel to the spaces, or at the ends? Yeah, like that.
So, this is the side that this grass area in here is what was left at pretty much grade level for additional parking if it was needed. And the extra light poles that are along here,
Yeah.
so 3 of them. So this is the area, I'm an abutter right there.
So that corresponds to where you want the other planes, and that's where you actually showed it on the
Yes.
other plan, okay.
And the hope would be to find plantings that would both bridge that lower. You can see how the trees have grown up.
Oh, yeah,
So-
okay, yeah, so you see
Yeah.
there.
Right, so this is-
There's one of the
this is-
footings there,
yep.
it's kind of like someone bumped
lighting,
into
yep.
it.
Right, so this
Sure
is,
someone has bumped into it.
yeah, this is behind the Canton Street
Yeah,
abutters.
So that's where we're proposing to, those,
Yeah.
the majority of those 54 trees.
so could those unused, yeah, there they are again, could those be removed?
We
Trim
can
these,
absolutely make sure that those get removed
And,
as part of the planting.
And then you'll put the plantings in along there?
Yeah.
And so they won't be, will they be actually be trees or more of arborvitae or bushes or?
We would work with the staff to find a you know, what, to
So
make sure.
that- So should we, are we getting a more detailed planting scheme for that, or
Yes.
do we have it already?
You only have the kind of concept response that they provided in the presentation
And it sounds to
now.
me like we've got a couple of things. We've got the
Right.
landscaping plan that
and the
could
lighting
be-
plan.
address these trees. We have the lighting to prove that it's truly how it's going to balance out. It sounds like this fire department stuff was okay. but
Resolved.
Would we want to consider just continuing this to the next meeting to give them time to provide those
Yeah, I think
detailed
so.
plans, and then we could take it up then? Or?
Right. You're not about to start on this construction tomorrow, are you?
We are, and
We filed a building permit to start this process, as you know, so, I mean, we would love to have a conditional approval tonight.
the reason, this program, the DPU program was originally to be completed by the end of the year. And so that's the trigger. We have some extension to do this work into next year. So no, this is a program that we would like to do, the foundation work before the winter is what our push is. And so ideally, we've got to order steel and get that foundation work done so we can do the erection. We don't want to be pouring concrete in the winter, and we're trying to avoid an entire 6 to 8 month delay in the entire project. So it's a marquee site for them. It's, you know, their CEO sits here, and we only respectfully request that we meet every requirement and every intention, and provide you every piece of information that you need. We would just only respectfully request that could be done subsequent to tonight, and allow us to start the building permit process and review process and finalize all of our electrical plans concurrent.
So we've gotten into trouble because we held off on things, but there was a special permit. This is only an EIDR.
Right, so your next meeting is October 3rd. The zoning board is meeting on this tomorrow night for special permit. So even, there's no strict 20-day appeal period. I mean, it sounds like there are two items, the landscape plan and the lighting plan, specifically the lighting plan that you want to see. If you continue that to your next meeting, the board could possibly approve it that evening and then have any approvals ready to go right after that, which would be October 4th. So you would still be in that window before you could even move forward with building permits based on any action taken by the zoning board, even if they acted at their meeting tomorrow night.
Understood.
Because they need a special permit from the,
Ground-mounted solar requires a special permit from the zoning board, and that's scheduled for tomorrow night.
why don't we do that? Next meeting is when? October 4th?
Tuesday, October 3rd.
3rd, okay. All right, so we can wrap it up October 3rd. We just need the plan, the lighting plan and the more detailed
Landscaping.
landscaping plan.
Understood.
Do you want to make a motion to continue?
Yeah, so I move we continue the hearing to October 3rd, 7 o'clock, Champagne Room
Yep.
at the Carvey Municipal Building.
I second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Item number 3 on the agenda tonight, 213 Fox Hill Drive. This is Sprint, a wireless EIDR, public hearing proposal to add 3 antennas, 3 remote radio heads, cabling, and associated equipment at existing wireless facility.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Ignacio Formoso, and I work for Tower Resource Management at 16 Chestnut Street in Foxborough, Massachusetts. I'm here on behalf of Sprint tonight, and this is regarding an upgrade that Sprint proposed back in 2014. We went through the full approval process, and we got a building permit granted, but unfortunately, Sprint never got their equipment in on time. 3 years later, I find myself here again. And basically, there is no change to the initial upgrade that we were proposing back in 2014, and again, was approved. And it's at the town water tank at 213 Fox Hill Street. We're going up at the height of 85.2, and what we're doing is we're adding 3 antennas and 3 radio heads to the existing telecom facility. All the photo sims are still there. They're actually the original photo sims. Again, nothing has changed from the prior approval.
All right, are there any staff comments?
Right. No, as applicant mentioned, this was approved in 2014, but you have the permit is only good, the approval is only good for 2 years, so that has expired last year, so they've resubmitted the application. It's the same application. They did provide the coverage maps in your packet, the existing proposed. That was a condition that was outstanding in 2014, but they have now provided that in your packet, as well as the certification from an engineer that the project meets all the state and federal health and radio frequency certifications coverage, that they're within the parameters. So you did receive those. They are looking for 3 waivers from your general site plan review condition, or section 7.3. That's for a site plan showing, the full site plan showing all features of the site, the drainage, stormwater, parking and landscaping. Request for a waiver for the exterior lighting plan. Request for a traffic, waiver of the traffic study requirement and the requirement for the presentation model. And then if you approve this, I had drafted a standard 6 conditions that you typically impose on wireless applications.
Do we have any special, I mean, why don't we just do the same ones we did last time?
Right, they,
Is there anything additional?
the one additional one I would add is an updated authorization from the property owner prior to the release of your decision. We did have the authorization from 2014, but I just want to make sure with the Dedham Westwood Water District that they are still approving this application, just to have that confirmation. And then condition number 2 as prepared would be that the all the antennas and cabling be painted to match the color of the water tank, that the applicant verify through a report prepared by an outside professional that there's no interference with emergency communications, that the planning board be notified within 30 days of any discontinuance, and all the whole facility and equipment be removed. The 2-year time limit, and then the copy of the decision be kept on site during construction. And
Are there any issues with like generators and?
I don't think
No-
there
no
is no
generators,
generators
sir.
So
here.
we did have
We're
some.
battery backup.
For the original decision, the technology hasn't changed at all since?
No, sir, it's a 2.5 upgrade. What it is a higher frequency, and it doesn't penetrate as much, but it goes much further. And it's really for the data download. It's for voice, but it's primarily the technology they're putting up there is more for the download speeds because the demand is getting greater and greater.
So, but we did have a few neighbors showed up and they had some concerns at the original hearing.
There was one condition from the 2014 that was sort of not your standard, which was that anyone visiting the site or performing inspections only have access to the site on this property. There were some concerns raised in 2014 that there may have been some trespassing onto abutting properties. So you did have that condition in there. from 2014. However, you're not really allowed to do that anyways, so it's, you don't typically impose conditions that are with the law anyways, but that was,
It's really redundant.
Right, so we would be saying like no trespass.
yeah, that's essentially what the 2014 decision said.
I think some neighbors showed up and they were concerned about that, so we put it in to guarantee that they wouldn't have any problems.
So,
So are these replacements for?
No, sir. What Sprint has on this water tank is the upper level. We have 3 sectors, and we currently only have 1 antenna per sector. Those sectors can handle up to 4 antennas. What's up there right now is the 800 and 1900 technology, which again, it was more designed for voice. This technology is designed for data. And I mean, the site there's multiple carriers on this site. We're not the only ones on there, so. But it's adding 3 antennas and 3 radio heads, and what the radio heads is, they interpret what the antenna brings in, and they go right behind the antenna. And there's no, we're not welding anything onto this water tank. The pipes are already there. If they do anything, they swap out the pipe and they put a new pipe in there. So there's no, this site was designed for telecommunications, basically is what I'm trying to say. So.
are there anybody from the public wishing to comment? Any other board member questions? Well, it looks like there are 4 waivers that we would need to grant, and then the 6 conditions that you talked about. So I guess we would need a couple of motions to.
I move that we grant the 4 waivers. The waiver for site plan showing drainage, stormwater management, parking, landscaping, sewage, and trash removal. A waiver on requiring an exterior lighting plan. A waiver requiring a requirement for a traffic study, and waive the presentation model.
Thank you.
So I move we grant all those waivers.
So I have a motion
Second?
and a second. All those in favor of granting the waivers, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. I think next we would need a motion to approve with the conditions, right?
Yep.
So moved. We grant,
Is there a,
is this a special permit or?
No, this is EIDR.
It's an EI. I move that we grant the EIDR with the conditions as presented.
I second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, the motion passes.
I move we close the hearing. then.
I second the motion.
A motion to close the hearing and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4, Westview Estates Definitive Subdivision Amendment, Thompson Avenue. Continuation of the public hearing from September 5th. Modification request to amend the approved plan that includes trees planted every 30 feet on both sides of the street.
Hi, I'm Paul Trider. I represent CS Westview, the original developer of the street. We're here to request a modification to an approved subdivision plan as it relates to the tree planting scheme. When we were here at the last meeting, we had all kind of come to an agreement that we would come back with a more detailed tree planting that we sat down with the homeowners to come up with. The homeowners did a great job here on coming up with a plan that works well within the guidelines we all spoke about at the meeting. We've come up with a plan here that has the 60 original trees that we were supposed to plant in this subdivision. They're not all where they were originally, but the the homeowners provided some great renderings that I'm sure you guys have reviewed of where the trees will be when we plant them. We're all in the process now of ordering trees, getting them planted, speaking with the landscapers. The homeowners would like to use their own landscapers, so we're going to do that. So if you guys want to look at the trees, and I think we've got them, when we last spoke, as long as they were streetscape trees within 20 feet or so of the street, you guys, or the planning board had agreed that we could use those as part of the 60 trees. The numbered trees, the yellow dots are the trees that we would like to plant. They're all within the 20-foot requirement of the street that we spoke about. If you could see, so they're all numbered, and then they're all summarized in the graph. If the planning board agrees, we'll get to planting these. We've actually ordered 19 of the trees now to plant next week, and 4 of the lots on the other end of the subdivision. And we didn't really want to have the landscaper on the homeowners' lots until we got some more definitive clarity that this was okay to go ahead and do. Julie Menendez is here. She met with all the homeowners and put this together, and it was well thought out and well designed and well within the parameters that we all spoke of at the last meeting.
Great.
Any,
So are there any trees, because I don't really see them, I thought there were trees that the homeowners had planted.
There are, some of those are the circles that don't have numbers in them, and some of them won't. These are Google Maps, so it depends when Google took the picture. So part of that is, so if you can go back to that one. So these 3 through 7 have already been planted, for example, and we're gonna add 2 more. So we'll have to get paid, the landowner will have to get paid for the existing plus the new.
That's great.
To be counted, it's all counted towards the 60.
So you've come to agreement with the developer to receive those?
We need to, yes, now come to agreement with the payment.
Mhm.
That's great.
But we're taking this on to do it ourselves.
So what we're trying to do is to get this done so that we can get the street approved at the next town meeting.
Yeah, I'm happy that you guys were
We've
able
got
to talk
another
together.
meeting.
That's great.
But
So
say
the-
that-
I'm just glad that you guys were able to work it out since the last meeting. That's excellent.
Yeah, well, we were trying to do something different, which we got some guidance that wasn't gonna work, so this works. It's not the best, but it works for everybody.
So there are 4 lots that currently don't have a house built on them.
Well, there's 2 lots with no houses. That's a little bit of a misnomer on
Okay.
that.
And
Those will all have trees in front of them.
lots 15, 9, 14, and 10.
Yes.
So you're,
Those are the 19 that Paul just referenced that they've
Yeah.
already ordered the trees for.
so you're going to,
So one of those houses is closing in September, from what I'm told. I'm not part of that group. We sold the lots to a home builder. So he's got 4 trees that he wants, that his new buyer wants. The original home builder owns 2 of the lots. He's gonna put the trees that were supposed to be required in his lot. And the other lot, the owner's gonna plant trees where he was required to plant the trees.
all right, so those trees will be planted?
Yes.
So, okay.
Just as a point of clarity, so that summary page where it broke it down by lot.
identify yourself just.
Yeah, so you'll see, it says how many have already been planted, how many new.
Yeah.
And then,
If you could give your name for the-
oh, I'm sorry, Julie Menendez. So if you go back up towards the beginning of the presentation, that right there. So on the right, you have the number Thompson Ave on the left, right, on under the design summary, and then the actual lot that it corresponds to, and you'll see how many new existing versus new if there is a need to decipher that. And then you can see under the line are the 4 lots that had trees assigned to it that were not currently owned by residents. So that's something that Paul's team is taking on. And actually, I actually spoke to one of them with 4 trees. I'm not sure if it was lot 15 or lot 10 because I had found out who they were, and I conveyed to them what we were doing. So they told me that they were notified.
So sorry, your address again? Which
I'm
one?
49, lot 21. Yeah, lot 21.
So that little note at the bottom there with the asterisk.
So actually that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. So we have this water basin, retention basin that's in the neighborhood. And it's, if you go to the page that has a number of the trees, that's it, exactly. So
That's a lot
it's,
of trees.
well, it is, and it's actually not enough to make it the way we would like it to look from a collective neighborhood. That's it. So our landscaper said we needed 28 trees, but we're going to go with something that gets big and looks really nice, but it really looks disgusting right now. And so we as a neighborhood hate to look at it. And so we have all forfeited trees because we've already done either landscaping ourselves or, quite honestly, if you were to drive down the streets, there's power boxes in front yards and there's irrigation systems and there's all this stuff. So you can't plant trees in some of the areas of our yards. And so we have looked at this and said, well, collectively, we would like to beautify this area more since it's part of, our community. So again, we have to have, before any of this can be done, we have to have NSTAR come down and, qualify everything. But our intention is that if it's not exactly where we've plotted it, it's, right next to it.
So it looks like there are about 10 trees there right now. Is that the?
They're not of the 3-inch caliber.
So you're going to take out those 10 and replace?
No, we might not. We might just plant them behind them if we can. But those trees will shed quite a bit, the ones that are there, and that's what causes problems with the retention basin. And when the HOA takes it on, it's going to become our problem. So we're trying to think of something that we don't have an irrigation system at this point there. We're not going to pay to put one in. So we're trying to think of something that will live within the elements of weather and not require significant cost to upkeep and still look nice.
Oh, so you can see the shadows of the existing trees on that, I think, right?
I don't think maybe there's 6 little branchy trees, like twigs.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to see a shadow from them. I don't know what that is.
But why does that area not look good right now?
There are arborvitaes, I believe, planted. No, they're not arborvitaes. They're 10 birch trees. The neighbor right to the right of that, when we were walking, actually said she loved the trees and wished we could keep the overgrown
No, Paul,
retention basin.
she didn't like the trees. She liked the flowers that grew in the water retention basin and was upset that those were cut back.
We might have misunderstood each other. I thought she liked the
These
trees.
are them.
On a good day.
It's a construction site.
Yep.
Oh,
So that's in front of the basin there. And this is as you come down Briarwood.
I mean, these extra plantings are going to make that neighborhood look really nice
so,
Yes.
from the plan.
So what's supposed to be planted in that detention basin? Just grass or
The original plan just called for 3 trees in front of that basin.
But the basin itself would just be
It-
grass?
It's just grass.
Yeah.
So if it isn't looking good, is that because the grass isn't being maintained?
It's really not grass, it's just wild.
Yeah, I mean, you'll-
It's
Oh, so what does the Conservation Commission require for that detention basin? Then do you
I
know?
don't.
I mean, you have your structure and drainage.
We didn't
I'm not
review
sure.
this, but it's typically a wildflower mix or
Yeah.
wild. It doesn't look like a typical lawn.
Yeah.
It looks like a
Yeah.
retention basin.
So if
Yeah.
there's a problem with the way it looks, what, you should talk to the Conservation Commission agent?
Well, we can't plant anything until we get the okay with the space and distance from, I mean, if we have to take those trees out, we will. If we can't, you know, if the other trees would be too close to the retention basin. So we just have to get the okay, but I don't know what wires or anything else might be underneath there.
So the,
Our idea would be to keep those trees in and plant right behind them. That would be
Oh,
our
behind,
ideal
okay.
situation.
So I want to sponsor your question. I have the operation maintenance plan, which
Hmm.
simply requires mowing. So essentially that, you know, all you want to do is make sure it doesn't go back to all trees in there because it needs to
Okay.
be ready to accept the water. I mean, that's what its purpose is.
And who does the mowing? The homeowners?
So the homeowners association.
Okay, so it's pretty much up to the homeowners association to make that look good, but not do anything to it that would violate what the Conservation Commission wants it to do, is to function as a.
Karen was out there to look at it and
Mm-hmm.
It's fine.
was fine.
Fine, okay.
Right.
I don't have any issues with the plans that were presented.
Good.
Right.
are there any other board comments or any?
I just had one more comment. I know I did review this with Karen Catroni, the conservation agent, and she just recommended that, I mean, the trees in front of the detention basin just need to be spaced so that they can survive. So it depends on what
Right.
plant, but usually at least, you say 8 to 10 feet between trees so that they can grow and not die.
Crowded.
So they may have to be staggered, some of those. I think with the 16 as shown, they could fit there,
How far,
but
what's the frontage? What's the width of the-
I don't remember, but it looked like the 16 could fit about 10 feet apart. But if there's going to be more than that, they would probably have to be some behind.
Well, right now,
Right.
we only can pay for the 16, so
Okay.
that would make it work the best. I mean, you know, you could always
Yeah.
throw one on the side a little bit and stuff like that, but.
Yep. I have the plan.
Are there any comments from the public? Anybody, any other residents or anyone here who wants to speak on this? Well, I'm glad that this is great. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago, and you guys went out and worked out a solution. It's awesome.
Great.
I want to thank my neighbors. One of them came while I was at curriculum night, so thank you.
So what are we doing tonight? We're just approving
The
alternate
amended
landscaping plan.
landscape plan.
All right, so I move that we approve the amended landscape plan as presented tonight.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Do we need to close?
Does it say here?
Yes. Yep. This is a hearing. Yep.
Are we coming back for the street acceptance?
Yes, we still have to review the final
Yes.
closeout of the subdivision to prepare for the street acceptance. So that would be at a forthcoming meeting. There would still be a separate hearing with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance and Warrant Commission, which are likely going to be mid-October, probably October 16th or October 17th. So we'd recommend planting those trees before that time so that the planning board can make a recommendation on the street acceptance.
And then I noticed that we're also listed here on an action item number 7, but I don't, if you have any questions that you need us now.
Okay.
Respond, otherwise.
Right, I know we're still reviewing the final, I think Phil has done a final inspection, and we were just checking on a couple things to make sure that, I think a sub-drain was installed, and then we'd have to have the updated as-built plan to show the trees with those final locations, and then review the final legal documents and homeowners association.
So we wouldn't be making any decisions on that?
Not tonight, right. It was really just informational that at your next meeting or one of your earlier October meetings, we could review that and more.
But the planning board just recommends that the.
Makes a
the
recommendation
street
to the
be
Board of
accepted by the
Selectmen.
town.
Yep.
And And in the future, is there any more money to be released on any of that?
There's a tri-party agreement, so once we confirm that all the work is complete and that all conditions have been met with the subdivision, you can release them from the performance guarantee.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I move we close the hearing.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is Westwood Estates definitive subdivision, formerly known as 9 Hedgerow Lane, 443 Canton Street, Wight Lane. Preliminary review of proposed modification to alter the Hedgerow Lane layout at the intersection of the new Hedgerow Lane and in front of 6, 18, and 21 Hedgerow Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You
My name-
recuse?
Not this one.
Oh, not this one, okay. Which one? Oh, Gay Street. Gay Street. All right.
We can use the poster boards if you want. Maybe I'll just,
Okay.
I could face this one to the audience.
Sure, yeah, I colored some up that might make it a little bit easier for people, that's all. I think that plan I have with me, but it also is not colored, so. Is that okay here, Abby?
Can the board see? Can everyone see this?
Yeah, fine.
Is that better? And then maybe I can turn it to some members of the audience. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Matt Smith. I'm an engineer with Norwood Engineering Company. We're here to take another look at Hedgerow Lane. Hedgerow Lane, as you probably remember, is a subdivision that was approved that came off of Canton Street. And at that time, we had a design that addressed the driveways of the three first houses on Hedgerow Lane. Since our discussions with the board and our approval, we've had some more discussions with the abutters, with our neighbors, and they had some other preferences that are different than what we had decided previously. So if you look at my upper right board, that's what's been previously approved. And if you look closely, there's 3 yellow houses, and there's 3 separate driveways that go to those houses. If you can look at the one that I have on the floor, if you can see that, that's the shape of the existing Hedgerow Lane. And as you can see, there's a little cul-de-sac at the end of Hedgerow. And yeah, maybe if Abby could hold that up, thank you. So currently, there's the Hedgerow is a cul-de-sac, and there's a circle in that area. In my understanding, and there are neighbors here tonight, and I'll let them speak for themselves, obviously, that it was their desire to keep that type of a design. So if you look at my drawing on the left, again, you see the 3 yellow houses, and we've kept that circle shape exactly. The circle will stay exactly as it is right now, and there'll be a little driveway that will go out to the new Hedgerow Lane. And then just below the circle, there is another driveway that will connect to the first house on the street. And so what we're here tonight, we'd like to hear comments from the neighbors. We'd like to hear comments from the board and get some direction as to how we should proceed. Our intention would be to come back to you with a modification, a definitive modification to the subdivision to design the schematic that I show on the left-hand side. So we've had some discussions with the neighbors. I know there's been some disagreement. I think we have a pretty good degree of agreement tonight, but we're here to have everybody speak. And at this point in time, I'd open it up to any questions that you have.
Thank you. Do we have any board members with questions immediately?
Wow, so where are the driveways that were from all the 3 houses? Could you point them out?
Yes.
And I was going to throw one of the, so the plan that was approved is behind this one, right? So maybe we can move that one over there just so that I'd like to be able to see all three at once.
Okay, yeah,
Oh, that's
kind of awkward for the audience. Hate to do this, but I can't always have the graphics facing everybody, so.
So this is the,
turn it around. And if you, maybe if people can come up.
or you could even put that plan over,
Okay,
I
that might be
think,
better.
then the audience can at least see that.
Okay, great.
So this is the approved plan is the stamped.
That's better. Yes, so this is the approved plan where there's 3 driveways here in that location. And again, that's something that, oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So the approved plan, we had 3 separate driveways coming to the 3 separate houses. And in discussion with the neighbors, that is not their preference. So what we're proposing is to keep this cul-de-sac shape, which is the same cul-de-sac that exists now. So these 2 houses will continue to access off of the cul-de-sac, and then this house will come there. It will be, they'll keep their existing driveway, but it will just be a little bit longer. Currently, their driveway goes out. This house driveway that's just closest to Canton Street, that currently goes out to Hedgerow Lane. We're keeping the same concept that they will go out to Hedgerow Lane, but via a little bit of a longer driveway in this darker driveway is what we've shown.
So,
Mr. Chairman, should I go ahead and answer that
yes,
question?
how
or-
many, well, I was
Okay,
going to also
sure.
ask, like, so what's the difference between in the approved plan and what you're showing there? You said it's a little longer. Is that, I think that's what we're trying to understand, is the length of that.
Yes, of this first driveway. I recall it's about 40 feet. Let me take a look on the scale.
I think it was about 40 feet of new drive for the house at the corner of Canton and Hedgerow.
Yes, that's correct, 40
So
feet.
why does it need to be longer? What's changing about the rest of the?
Because it's going across from here to here.
The old hedgerow is being removed, physically removed.
Yes, the old hedgerow is over here,
It's a little,
and then the new hedgerow is going to be over here.
pavement is here or here, so they've added this.
But the difference between what was approved was showing and also having to be extended, so.
Yeah.
Yes,
It seemed like it
yes.
would need to change from the approved to the new suggestion.
Yes, that's correct, that the
Seems to have
approved
gotten
one,
wider also.
the approved one, yes, did have to be extended also. So the one that we're proposing tonight would be extended. And we did make it a little bit wider just to make it, I don't know, just,
How many feet wide is it?
sure. "20 feet wide on this one.
Right at where it meets the street?
No, that's a little bit beyond. At the mouth, it is 30. So it goes from 20 and then flares out to 30.
That's an awful big flare.
We could narrow that down.
What's the other one? What's the width of the cul-de-sac you're proposing?
The cul-de-sac at the street, that's about 45. But again, it's to kind of blend in with the size of the.
Yeah, but it's,
That's about 30 feet from, as the width of the pavement and the cul-de-sac is 30, so we kept it about the same. We certainly could narrow it down a little bit. We're at 25 right now, so certainly we could make it smaller because it will function as a driveway, and we could make it smaller with a kind of more of a rural character to it.
but when what you're proposing, who owns that cul-de-sac?
Sure. That whole cul-de-sac will be part of the right-of-way, and that's what was approved originally. Originally in this approved plan, it's an odd-shaped layout, but the entire former Hedgerow lane will be also part of the right-of-way of the new one. So in the approved plan, this will all be within this cul-de-sac, will be part of the roadway layout, and that's what we're proposing now. So if you see this, kind of see this shape that comes around and then back up at an angle, the same thing, the shape comes around and back up at an angle, and that's what we did at the approval.
Yeah, but the problem is the one we approved, it just had driveways through it, and didn't look like a street. Now this looks like a street, even though it really isn't a street. I mean, I think there'll be a real problem when it comes to street acceptance, how that is, the little cul-de-sac is treated.
Well, as far as the procedure, that will be part of the proposal. It would be part of the right-of-way. It would be not on the individual lots. But if I could make a suggestion, I personally would like to hear some of the neighbors speak on this. Again, this came about from discussions with the neighbors and trying to listen to what they wanted, so maybe it would be better if they speak rather than I speak to that matter.
Yeah, I think this would be a good time for neighbors to speak. If you could come to the podium and identify yourself and your address.
Yes, my name is Paul Schneiders. I'm an attorney, 779 Washington Street, and I specialize in land use and zoning law. I am representing the Davies. Mrs. Davy, Ellen Davy, who's an attorney, is here tonight, and her daughter, Faith Kimball, is there. And I think the best, quickest way, because I know you've got a lot of stuff on your agenda tonight, would be if I just hand this out. If you could pass it around. And I apologize for the copying. We had toner problems late in the day, too late in the day to fix it, so we'll do that tomorrow. But in any event, this is a letter on August 12th that I sent to the town when the petitioners were planning to go to the selectmen to ask the selectmen to grant them the relief that they needed in order to do Plan Number 1, which was accepted by this board. And I actually should call that Plan Number 2, and in a minute I'll explain what I mean by that. But there are 3 plans that have been floating around since they started this well over a year ago. And I think if I just go through this, it'll be quickly, go quicker. Attorney Davy, Mrs. Davy, is totally opposed to the plans submitted to the Board of Selectmen for its consideration regarding the changes to Hedgerow Lane. That's the plan that this board approved, and we are absolutely opposed to that. That plan would abandon the existing Hedgerow Lane access and cul-de-sac as a traveled way and replace it with landscaping and 2 very lengthy driveways from the new Hedgerow Lane to my clients and the 2 abutters' houses. Exhibit A in this letter shows that one, and you're familiar with that one because that's the one you approved. This plan would raise the issue of whether my client still has legal frontage and vital access. Furthermore, it would require to have an extremely long driveway which someone would have to maintain. Just traveling the length of that new driveway to bring her rubbish to the new Hedgerow Lane would be very burdensome to her, as would the concern that the driveway may not be adequately plowed or maintained. The developer says a homeowners association would maintain it even if it remains town property. This raises numerous legal and practical issues, a homeowners association on town property, and who's going to pay for it, and why should they have to pay for it, because these people want a subdivision. And the homeowners association would supposedly take care of the cul-de-sac, the new driveways, and the new landscaping. None of that was worked out in advance. And that is all the reasons why we're opposed to the plan that currently has been approved by this board. Originally the developer, and that was Plan 2. I'm going to talk about Plan 1 now.
Originally, the developer promised the abutters he would have the town deed the original Hedgerow Lane and cul-de-sac to the abutters so that they had frontage on the new Hedgerow Lane and would have substantially larger front yards. That's shown in Exhibit B. That's the plan they brought before your board, and then at some point withdrew it and substituted that plan that you approved. And that was done without any notification to the abutters. The developer abandoned this plan and had the current plan approved by your board. The abutters did not object to this second plan because they were not shown it. On August 7th, 2017, Mrs. Davy, her son Joseph, who's an engineer, and Faith, who is a instructor in the Westwood Public Schools, and I met at the site with the developer and its planner. They agreed to submit this new plan, which is before you tonight. That's Exhibit C. That plan would maintain the existing Hedgerow Lane with some slight modifications. This plan would have to be approved by the Board of Selectmen and your board. My client is very much in favor of this third plan since it appears the original plan shown to the abutter is no longer an option. So to make it very clear, we would have liked plan number 1, which was brought before your board but then withdrawn. We are totally opposed to plan number 2, which your board approved, and we are in favor of this new plan. I think it solves a lot of the legal and logistical problems that the current approved plan raises, and I think it's by far a better one. Question was asked a couple minutes ago about the acceptance of the cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac is already a Westwood accepted town road, and it would just stay that way. Whether the other Hedgerow Lane would be accepted by the town would be up to a future town meeting. Thank you.
Could you distinguish, you said Plan 1, Plan 2, and Plan 3, and then you're showing Exhibit A, Exhibit B, and Exhibit C. What's the relationship between those?
Yeah, Exhibit A is the first one they brought before your board and the one that they showed to us, and that's the one that we were in favor of. And Exhibit B is the one that they substituted about a year into the process, and that's the one you approved. And Exhibit C is the one that's before you tonight, and that's the one that we believe is the one most fair, most reasonable to the abutters, and frankly, from the town standpoint, the most, the one with the least problems. So a lot of logistical and legal problems raised by the first two. Actually, you need town meeting action on both of the first two. You would not need town meeting action on this one. You do need your approval and the selectmen's approval, because of course it's a town way.
Well, you're creating a new little connection between the existing cul-de-sac, which is part of the town, and the new roadway. So what's the status of that new existing connection? Isn't that a new way, and wouldn't that need some kind of approval?
That would become part of the right-of-way for the new roadway, which that same parcel, that same shape existed in your existing approval. So in similar ways, that piece of land would be part of the new right-of-way.
Which still requires Board of Selectmen approval, but if it remains as part of the right-of-way.
Approval for what? Because
Well, for any work or alterations within the right-of-way. Town meeting comes into play if the land within the right-of-way is proposed to be abandoned and transferred to a private property owner.
and then the third thing is if the town wants to accept
The
street, and what happens there, I have no idea.
Well, that is a process through the town meeting also, but that has nothing to do with our problems. That has to do with any subdivision in the town of Westwood.
Yeah, but we want to create a subdivision.
Yep.
That when we go to accept it as a street, it makes sense and it's something the town could accept. The town doesn't normally have streets that have little bulges on them like that connect to a cul-de-sac that is also an accepted street, but and then there's, the part to be abandoned. This is very complicated.
Right. During the course of your public hearings for this application, when the application first came to the planning board, it showed the existing hedgerow right-of-way to be physically removed and the land transferred to the property owners when you discovered and that this board does not have any authority to do that. Only town meeting can do that. So the plans were revised during the course of the open and continued public hearings that went on for several meetings. But the difference was that it would be the pavement and the curbing, the existing hedgerow would be physically removed but still remain part of the right-of-way. That way, there would be no town meeting action required. That was the plan that you approved in November last year.
So with what's approved, looking at this, the map here with the green and the blue, the green area that is the existing cul-de-sac like that, if we took no action, and the idea is that that cul-de-sac would be ripped up and become grass, but it would still be in the right-of-way
Right.
and be owned by the town. It's just
Right. It would exist on paper. Those lots on Hedgerow would maintain their legal frontage along the cul-de-sac on paper, but physically on the ground, it would still be within the right-of-way, but it would be the bulb removed with the driveways extended and grass brought up to the new Hedgerow Lane.
So the only difference between A and B is we're not showing the way the lots would be on the original plan. We're just showing a bunch of parcels that are all segmented, ready to be transferred to the owner, which could then be done by the selectmen. So it looks like Plan B is really the same, it's gonna look the same as Plan A,
Well,
but the
the
property
original
ownership-
Plan B would also need town meeting action, because it would be taking the town's right-of-way and conveying that to private property owners.
But that conveyance that doesn't occur, though. We're not, in our acceptance of the subdivision, we're not conveying any land, we're just subdividing it into parcels. Some of those parcels were a cul-de-sac, but the pavement's being removed. And so they are no longer, well, we're also allowing them to pave driveways across it, which
And my question
Right.
is,
which is, I think, maybe a little problem in itself. But people pave their driveways across the last 10 feet of their property all the time.
Right.
And the only difference being here is it's a lot longer.
Yes.
but my question is, before, under that scenario, before we could approve the subdivision, we'd have to have the transfer of ownership go through, wouldn't we?
Right. I mean, this board wouldn't have the authority to approve that.
And that would be town meeting.
Right.
So there is no difference between Plan A and Plan B as far as what it looks like, and as far as the parcels. It's just who owns the parcels, and we're leaving the parcels under town ownership, and so that action can occur anytime in the future. We don't care when.
Right.
That's the difference?
So when the planning board ultimately came to the plan for approval, you left it to be within the right-of-way because it was more consistent with your subdivision rules and regulations, where and how the street physically intersects. Your regulations don't allow for dead ends off of dead ends.
Well, that's the new Plan C.
Well, new
Plan
plans
C.
say make that a common driveway,
Well, I'm not sure.
would it not?
It would need an
Still owned by
amendment.
the- Still on the, it can't be a common driveway if it's still owned by the town. Nora, can you explain any of this?
So Plan A is not currently before you, so let's take that off for a second, we'll go back to that.
Thank you.
Plan B is what you've approved, but remember, your approval had a condition that that approval was a valid subdivision approval as long as the selectmen agreed to allow alterations to that cul-de-sac to remove pavement and add landscaping. So that hasn't happened. The selectmen have not granted that approval yet, and the three property owners are advising the selectmen that they would prefer if they would not grant that. So that leaves the subdivision in limbo right now. The Plan C proposal here is an alternate that may get you there, as far as allowing the, encouraging the selectmen to approve removal of portions of the pavement. So you get a design that meets some of the needs of the abutters, meets some of the needs of the developer. However, may be problematic down the line when you try to get Hedgerow approved as a public street. So if we can go back to A again, A was originally presented to the board. It was eliminated partly because town meeting approval was needed and there was no opportunity to obtain that approval during the subdivision process, but it was also, there was a concern about frontage. I just wanted to ask if all 3 lots have sufficient frontage if Plan A is approved?
Can you,
Right.
Plan, I'm a little confused on A and B. B, yeah.
Oh, sorry,
yeah.
sorry. Okay, Plan B then. The plan that is not currently before the board, this one that abandons the existing hedgerow, does that leave all 3 lots with sufficient frontage?
No, there's a width issue with one of the lots.
Right, so that was the greater problem with that plan, and that's the reason
For
the
18
subdivision
hedgerow.
wasn't approved, because at least one of those lots would have become a non-conforming lot by your approval of the subdivision, and you could not do that.
The house is too wide to fit through there?
If you look at the shape, it kind of narrows in and there's not enough width there.
So is there a different?
Why can't we just move that property line?
Right. Is there a different configuration that all 3 property owners and the developer could work out so that everyone has sufficient frontage on the new hedgerow? That would be the ideal situation, and that could be taken to town meeting in the fall, if that could be worked out.
We looked at that, we were not able to come up with a shape that had frontage and width for all 3. We tried, and that's why we didn't go forward with it.
So we have kind of a
Oh, what's the,
dilemma here, basically.
well, I don't see why there's such a problem here. What's the frontage requirement?
125 feet.
So, 6 Hedgerow has frontage on Canton Street, so that one's not a problem at all, correct?
Right, it was number 18 and 21.
And 21 would have new frontage all along the new Hedgerow lane, so that one shouldn't be a problem. If this is a huge frontage.
She's having difficulty hearing you, if you don't mind using
The 21 Hedgerow, their new frontage would be along the new Hedgerow lane, which would be quite a distance, so there'd be more than enough there. So the only one having a problem is 18 Hedgerow, and is the frontage along the new Hedgerow lane, that's, what is that distance?
There is enough frontage along Hedgerow,
All right.
but the issue is the width, if you look at.
So why can't we bring the property line straight back? So that would take,
If you look at, it's because if you look at that, the line
Some of
that
the
has
prop-
74.77, where it touches the cul-de-sac,
yeah.
that's the borderline between 21 and the Davy property.
Mhm.
And it's that point to the intersection with the Shang property line. It's that narrow width that you don't have enough width.
And so what would be necessary would be an agreement between the owners of
Yeah,
21,
yeah.
18, and the developer to alter the lot lines.
Correct.
You need to take from
Yeah.
each lot and give to each lot and change the shape.
Mhm.
That would be the ideal solution.
Yeah, so why can't we do that?
Well, because we would have to, because some of the neighbors would have to give up some of their land and transfer it to their neighbor, and I just didn't think that was feasible.
Well, as long as everyone agrees, there's no problem.
We're all here.
Well,
So could you adjust, there are 2 other lines in the property for between 18 and 21. Could you adjust them so they come out with the same area?
well, sure, if everybody agrees, absolutely. As I tell everybody, I can draw anything.
I mean, if the
I've
only
been doing
problem
this a long time.
is they don't want
But I
to
just,
lose any of their
the
property.
issue is, and I apologize if the owners of number 21, and I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce the name, but they would have to give up land. They would basically have to have land that. Yeah, sure. Sure.
Yeah, so is there shrubbery or there that would be affected if we adjusted some of the property lines? We have a,
Sure. What would happen?
Excuse me.
Yep.
Do you mind using this so my mom?
Oh, yeah, I apologize. Absolutely, sure. Sure, I hope you can hear me. Abby, I'm going to stand in front of you. So, it's this little piece right here, okay? See how this is kind of narrow, right, like here? So I would, if I could draw a line from here to say here, then I could have 3 frontages. But the person at number 21, they would have to give up some land here in order to make that happen.
But
So
couldn't you
that's-
redraw the other line to the left there and
yeah.
give it back to him on the other side?
Oh, sure. I mean, you could, yeah, you could,
move
you
your
could
finger to the
go
left, yeah,
here.
right over there, right
You
over
could
there.
go here, then
Yeah.
to that.
Exactly.
Sure.
We just swapped the.
Sure, sure, it could, but they, yep, and it would have to be an agreement between these 2 people.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, but, okay, but if we did that, pardon me, and again, we're here for solutions because we just want to get this done like everybody else, then you would have 3 long driveways, okay? Each person would own the land on the driveway, but you're going to end up with each house would have a driveway. So again, if there's objectives to the driveway being too long and things like that, we're going to be at the same place. Again, we will design it anyway. But if I could do a land swap and have each of these people have frontage, absolutely. But I just want everybody to understand that the driveways are also going to be longer, like we have here.
Compromises have to be made.
Yeah, but you could put in a shared driveway for 2 of those houses, so they come together and it'd be a lot better for I think the neighborhood to have one driveway instead of 2 parallel driveways like that. I think it'd be a lot nicer for both neighbors. The drivers just come together, have like a Y-shaped driveway.
So why
going
don't,
out.
let me jump in with, it sounds like there's 2 major issues. There's the long driveways and there's the lack of frontage. Are those the major concerns? I kind of would like to hear if the residents would like to comment at this point. We can always
Yeah.
come
Can
back
I
to
ask
more.
through the chair, can I ask Matt, Matt, if I'm understanding what you're suggesting is very much back to the very first proposal you gave us, right? A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, isn't that? In other words, you're gonna give us a lot of your land, increasing all of our land, and we're gonna end up with frontage on your street, correct?
Sure, and the only hang-up we had was we didn't want to have lots that didn't conform. In order to accomplish that, we'll need
Yeah.
agreements.
So our position would, as I said earlier in my letter, is we liked what they gave us a year and a half ago. Then we were shocked to find out that they had substituted a very different plan. So if Matt's going back to what his original plan was, we're in favor of that. And I think the 3 of us could all work together to make it work.
I think Plan A and B actually were the same. It's how you get there, and Plan B was a step to get to Plan A, but we couldn't do it. It had to be done by both the planning board in the subdivision decision and by the selectmen, and then and by the town if they will relinquish the land and give it to the neighbors.
And I do want to say that, just for the record, that when we did go from Plan B to the other one, that was done at a public hearing with the planning board, and it was presented at the planning board, and it was discussed at the planning board. So I I know that it's in the record, but it wasn't like all of a sudden the plan changed and nobody knew about it. We discussed it at length at the
Well,
public
I
hearing.
have to respectfully disagree. There were meetings in which they told them all about the first plan, and they got them all on board about supporting the first plan. And I agree that this was a public meeting, but I've been doing this for 40 years now, and unless you let people know, the average person doesn't know that there's going to be a swap. That they thought that what was going to be brought in was what they said was going to be brought in. And I hate to use the word bait and switch, because I don't think it was that
Absolutely not
intentionally,
true.
but it was
Absolutely
very
not
close
true.
to a bait, because,
No.
well, Matt, you led them to
We've
believe.
been
Gentlemen,
down,
Yeah.
I've known you for many years,
Yeah.
and that's not at all the case.
It's a misunderstanding.
That's
Yep.
not at
Let's
all the
move
case.
on from
Yep.
here.
So
Yep.
let me also
Paul, that's
understand.
not true at all.
Well,
I
Sir,
will not
sir.
stand that.
Sir, we've
Stop.
had a lot of, this this has been a long discussion here, so let's get to what the residents are looking for. And what do you want to do with that cul-de-sac? Like, do you want to keep that cul-de-sac and find you don't want the driveways under any circumstances? That's just
There's another.
Yeah, we want to hear from the other neighbor.
sir, if you could come and identify yourself and your address.
I'm one of the abutters. I'm on 6 Hedgerow Lane, John Shang. Okay, so what's being spoken of here, so far, obviously, it seems like a complete, very complex mess as to what's happening right now. Okay, because it's very a lot of things to consider. Okay, but I guess the main thing was what the Matt said was that because each of us, with the original plans or approved plan, have longer driveways, okay, that are not our property, okay, and also other land which is going to be seeded in there and that has to be maintained, which is also not our property. Think of it that way. Who's going to maintain that?
Well, I believe under the agreement that we're hoping takes place, it will become your property.
Well, as of the approved plan, yeah, right now, that's not the case.
This is a several-step process.
Yeah.
We can't do it in one step.
Right.
So it's going to take several steps. Involves, well, we've already taken our first step.
Yeah.
The selectmen have to take the next step, and
Yeah.
then ultimately, for you to get the property, you have to get the town to relinquish the property to you. So it's a 3-step process.
Yeah.
But in the end, I think we all want the same thing here.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if I really, from my point of view, though, I'm not sure if I want additional property, okay, first of all, okay, just to let you know, okay?
Here's the problem.
All right.
Physically, that road is going to be there, and you're going to have to drive from point A to point B. It's going to be longer, no matter how you look at it, no matter who owns it. That new length is going to be there.
Well, depending on the configuration.
No, not for you. For you, you're going to get a slightly longer driveway, no matter what. Because the new road's been moved away from your house, and you're going to have a driveway that is that much longer to
Right.
get to there, and I can see that's a concern for you about
Right.
well, who owns that extra distance,
Yeah.
and whether it's you or the town or the developer so we would like to have it to be you, ultimately, and we just have this a several-step process to get there.
Mhm. Well, I understand it is a process, but like I said, from my point of view, we really don't want, for us, per se, more land, okay, from our perspective, my
Yeah.
wife's and I, okay, just let you know, and we prefer just the way
Well,
it is.
you could be part of this, and you can give some of your backyard, I don't know if you have the room to do that, to the next door neighbor, so your property might come out the same if they adjust that line just right. Do you have bushes or something between your houses or anything? Just lawn, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could try squeezing the line around.
Yeah. Well, that's why
So your square footage remains the same.
That's why we need some discussion going forward between, that's really what it comes down to. That's really what it comes down to, to get a meeting of the minds
So-
between the parties.
You know what I mean, he's got like a little area over here that he could give to that other house, or move that whole line in there, and that will increase that width. So you can increase the width on both sides by moving the line.
Yep, good point.
So why don't you try to work that out?
Mrs. Davy would like to speak.
Yeah.
Our frontage goes right across his front yard.
Mhm.
That's what the planning board let the builder do. Our 175 feet goes right across his yard. And in a kind of an
Under the
odd,
approved plan?
Under the
in
existing
the way it
circumstances.
is now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so we front on Hedgerow Lane. He fronts on Hedgerow and Canton Street. And now we front on a road, and if the plan goes through the way it's proposed now, we will have a right-of-way on a town-owned meadow which the town said they're not gonna maintain. They're gonna grass it, but after that, you're on your own. And I mean, it's just kind of an unpleasant thing. Not to mention, the trash men and the mailmen are going to be dropping mail at the end of it on the new Hedgerow Lane. And I don't know, we'll have to get Hulk Hogan to come and take the trash out.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's gonna happen anyway, because even if we put in that cul-de-sac,
No, if you leave the cul-de-sac, our
the
driveway.
trash trucks are still not going to go down there. Once that's no longer,
Once it's no longer,
That's
it's
a
gonna
street.
become basically a common driveway, and you're gonna have
Yeah.
to put it to the end of that driveway anyhow.
yeah. Physically, they move the road, and you're gonna have to, that extra distance is there, and there's no way to get around that. I think one of your concerns is your lot becoming non-conforming. Is that a big concern?
No, it will be,
I mean, you have that choice. You can accept the lot lines the way they are here, and your property will be non-conforming, or we can try to move those lines to make your property still conforming
my
lot.
concern is it's going to front on a town-owned meadow instead of a road.
Well, that's what we want that to not happen. We want the town to cede over that land to the property owners, and so you would ultimately own it. That can't happen in one step. Again, it's a three-step process, but that's what we would like to see happen. And then you would have your property, it would all border on the new street, and the driveways could be moved, and maybe they could be combined, or number 21, maybe it could make a turn and go directly to the street and not be so close to where it is. It comes down and makes a sharp left. Could it make it earlier so that those driveways are more separated? You know, there are a lot of things you could think about here.
Would we own the cul-de-sac?
Yes.
Yes. We don't, so we can use the cul-de-sac.
Again, it
You
has
will
to be
own this,
approved.
if it goes to town meeting, and I don't think there'll be any problem with the town accepting what, be the planning board agree to this, the neighbors are all in agreement, the developers are all in agreement. If everyone's in agreement, and this goes to town meeting, the town meeting is going to accept it. There shouldn't be any problem there.
So we need to talk.
And what have been the selectmen?
I would prefer this plan because looking at this one, if you have 3 roads coming from New Hedgerow,
Could you
there are some
identify,
grasses.
could you give your name and address, please?
Joe, you gonna give your name?
My name is Jolie, I'm the owner of 21 Hedgerow.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, if you have 3 driveways from the new Hedgerow lane, and you have those spaces, who owns those spaces, and who's going to take care of those places?
Well, ultimately, it'll be your property, and your driveway will be on your property.
Whose property? There are 3 drive lanes.
But they'll all be on each homeowner's property. If we
If-
ultimately do, yes.
Revise the lines.
Yeah.
He's saying with that plan, who owns
This is the approved plan.
The approved,
Where it
yeah, but
was
the
in the
approved
right of
plan
way.
is these, yeah.
We were told the homeowners, so.
And I agree that my driveway is going to be all the way, all around from here to this end. It's going to be, I don't know, winter is
Could
going to
shortened.
be
They-
horrible.
They could shorten it and make it turn earlier, and I haven't seen your house, I don't know how that would affect. What do you consider to be?
This is long enough
Yeah.
for me, and if I go, this is double the length. It's horrible.
It's understood. That's why I think it would be best if you all talked and all came to an agreement.
I just want to make clear, you mentioned that it's multiple steps. One of those steps is going to town meeting for the permission to abandon it. Normally, when a roadway is abandoned, the roadway is split equally, and portions of that roadway are given.
Thank you. The roadway is split and portions of it are given equally to all the property owners. So the property owners would be the owners of these 3 houses, and the developer would all, the first step would be they would all split part of the land if town meeting abandoned it. We would need an agreement between all 4 parties ahead of time that said, that's the first step, that you each get your portion of it. The next step is that you then trade pieces around to get to the final
Four-step process.
configuration. We would need that agreement in place before town meeting could abandon it. Otherwise, we'd have to take a different process where the town would declare their surplus property and advertise it and request proposals for purchase of the property. A very different process. So I think we need our council involved, but the most important part is that all four property owners, the three houses and the developer, would have to have an agreement in place to start with. We have town meeting coming up in November. The selectmen are closing the warrant on Monday night. I can reserve an article, but we would need to move very quickly with the surveying and the legal agreement among all four parties in order to make it to town meeting.
You have to draw real fast, man.
Well, again, actually, that's no problem at all, and believe it or not, I like that part, because that's really what I went to engineering school for. But I can say, and we'll all get together, but there's a conflict between people don't like long driveways, and, I'm sorry. And there's a conflict, some people don't like the long driveways, and some people want the cul-de-sac, so that's what we're gonna have to work out, and hopefully they all can make an agreement, because it's not up to me, I just draw plans.
Yeah, so I think you should go ahead, but forget about the cul-de-sac. You want 3 driveways. You can, so you can move around the lot lines, move the driveways as necessary to make everyone happy.
Agreeable, sure, and be happy to meet with the neighbors.
And then will we all have frontage on the road?
Yes.
That's what we-
Yes. Mhm.
Make a motion to continue?
No, this is
This is
a really discussion item, so no formal application has been submitted.
Great,
Good luck to
great,
you all.
great. Thank you very much, thank you, thank
We
you.
want to thank Mr. Dave for her help, too.
Yep.
Yeah,
Sure.
again, and Nora also, thank you.
Okay, so the next item, I'm going to recuse myself because I have,
Absolutely, sure, yes. Yep.
so I will step down.
All right. Yeah, you probably,
Gavel over to the back.
this is, go into the audience and.
I'll be back in a sec.
Okay.
All right, we'll resume in take a short 3 to 4 minute break here.
2-minute break.
Now,
Mike, I apologize if I went on a little bit too much
Don't
there.
you worry about it, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Assistant board officer
All
that
right.
comes out.
No, you were right, you're absolutely right, thank you.
yeah.
My meeting summary.
Oh, okay. What do we need? Oh, motion, okay.
I think my mic's purposely sabotaged.
Okay, we're
Every
ahead of
week.
schedule.
Nobody wants to hear from me.
Brian,
Got in and out.
Oh, right, okay. So next on the agenda is 565 Gay Street, an approval not required A&R plan. And this is to create 3 single-family residential lots on a 6-acre parcel on Gay Farm Way. It's in single residence zone E. And introduce yourself and
Sure.
tell us about it.
Okay, so my name is John Glossa Engineering, 46 East Street in East Walpole. And I'm here representing the owner and the applicant of the land at 565 Gay Street, which is a 6-acre plus or minus piece of property that abuts Gay Street and also abuts Gay Farm Way. So what we've done is taken the property and drawn essentially 2 new lot lines, creating 3 lots, so 2 new lots, right? So it's an existing lot with an existing house and some outbuildings, and then we're going to create 2 lots to the rear that will have frontage on Gay Farm Way. So I know the question's going to be, about Gay Farm Way. I'm going to anticipate that right now. So I'm just going to read from your regulations, which is section 2.1.284. And this is under the definition of a street, and it says, a street shall be a way shown on a plan endorsed after March 11th, 1940, as not requiring approval under the subdivision control law. So I have with me, if you care to see them, 3 plans that meet that definition, that have the planning board signatures. They are dated after 1940, and they show frontage on Gay Farm Way. So if I may approach, I will give those to you, or...
Yeah, could you open them up and...
So this plan is... So this plan is a plan done in 1993, Plan Book 44, and it's plan number 370. I did kind of draw on this a little bit, but it shows Gay Farm Way here, right of way, and then some sort of extension of that, and then plan, and then the planning board signature down there. Second, oops, that's the subdivision plan. Sorry, I have them back here. Second plan that I have is one that's filed in 1974. It's filed in Plan Book 242, and it's plan number 130 filed at the Registry of Deeds. And again, shows right-of-way, Gay Farm Way, and lots off of Gay Farm Way. And that's that plan there. And then I have a third plan. I do have other examples, but I sort of kind of like
And
the...
what's the date on this one?
It's right here, filed as number 1930, 1974. Signed by your agent. That's how they did it back in the day. And then I do have another plan that's number 769 of 1995, filed in Plan Book 434, done by Paul Robinson. And it shows similar situation. There are other plans I have in my file. I don't want to just keep berating you with them, but I think those are 3 clear examples of...
One minor point here, just all 3 examples you sent for us show the property that you're trying to subdivide as being owned by someone else, being part of the first parcel. So when did this property, when did the back of the former Smith property become part of your property. See, it shows this is the lot, there's your lot. All three of them show that lot. Here it is right here.
When did the property become the property of?
Yeah, should be a more recent A&R showing that property exchange.
So you want to see the property for the current owner? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the current owner.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, at the point where it was divided and sold off.
I'll show it to you. I'm not sure that I understand
that
exactly
was-
why it's important.
I don't know. I'm
Okay.
trying to.
You want to see the property, the plan of the property
current,
that
yeah.
my client purchased. That's your question, correct?
Well, my question is, this property here at the time had frontage on Gay Street. did it
Gay
not?
Street, and it went all the way. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And then it,
So it's not on Gay Farm Way.
so this lot was not on Gay Farm Way until at some point some change was made.
No. Here's the property. I can give you the deed too if you'd like to see it.
Right, I'd just like to add that the plans that the applicant submitted are A&R plans. They're approval not required plans. The law says that there has to be frontage on a way approved under subdivision control. So essentially, that's a definitive subdivision plan, which is not an A&R plan.
Gay Farm Way does not qualify.
Correct.
So, I'm not an attorney, but I can read, and I'll read it to you again. Your definition, not my definition, not the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, not someone else. Your definition says a street shall be a way shown on a plan endorsed after March 11th, 1940, as not requiring approval under the subdivision control law. This planning board, not necessarily these members, but this planning board signed plans subdividing land that was on a way, the same way we're talking about, that's shown on a plan endorsed after March 11th, 1940, as not requiring approval under the subdivision control law. So those are your regulations. So whether you don't agree that your regulations don't follow the law, I'm not here to argue that. I think you should follow your regulations. I think it's only fair. 3 times previously, you signed plans subdividing property on Gay Farm Way. And now you're going to tell us that you're not going to sign a plan subdividing property on Gay Farm Way.
Abby, do we have any input from town council on this?
Yes, and the recommendation is that the applicant has not demonstrated sufficient evidence to prove that there's legal access to those 2 new lots, lots 2 and 3 in the back from Gay Farm Way, because Gay Farm Way is shown going over that lot 581 Gay Street, and also these plans that have been submitted, they've been endorsed by the planning board as not requiring subdivision approval. So they have not gone through the full subdivision process.
Again, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's exactly what your regulations say. Your regulations do not say a plan, a way shown on a plan, therefore approved and endorsed in accordance with the approved and endorsed after March 1940 as requiring approval under the subdivision control law. It clearly says as not requiring approval. So I don't see the difference, and I'm not an attorney, but I don't see...
Nor are we, and for the town, we have an attorney, and he's advised us differently. Yes.
The planning board has to act under the subdivision control law. If their regulations change that law or misinterpret it, then the board is acting inappropriately. So an A&R plan is only a plan endorsed by the planning board that has frontage on a way. The subdivision control law defines what that way is. If you have regulations that misstate that, it doesn't change your obligation to follow the subdivision control law. Town council has reviewed that and does not believe that you have sufficient evidence in front of you to show that Gay Farm Way is a way that allows for an A&R in accordance with the subdivision control law.
In addition, and I know we had another attorney who was explaining the difference between one end of Gay Farm Way and the other end, and these subdivisions which you're showing here are the other end of it.
They're not subdivisions.
I'm not the.
That's the selling.
Oh, the A&R, right, excuse me. So there's an A&R here, but it was for this property, but it had nothing to do with this such of Gay Farm Way.
How
Is that relevant?
those lots were created by A&R and what decisions the board that was sitting at that time made are irrelevant. What's important here is that it needs to be proven to you that Gay Farm Way, and specifically the portion of Gay Farm Way that goes from Gay Street along these properties that's proposed to show frontage on a way, you need proof that that is a way. As of tonight, you don't have that proof.
Agreed. And so,
You want to make a motion?
I'm gonna make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion.
Or,
Do I have to, I have to list reasons?
yes,
to
you should
deny?
state your reasons.
Okay.
And does
So
does a yes vote mean?
You're going to make a motion to deny.
I am making a motion to deny based on.
The acceptance of this A&R plan.
Exactly. Make a motion to deny the acceptance of this A&R plan for the following reasons. Number one, the applicant has not provided sufficient information to demonstrate that the proposed lots 2 and 3 front on one of the qualified ways as specified in Chapter 41, Section 81L of Mass General Laws. Number two, the plans submitted with this application are not shown on a way approved in accordance with the subdivision control law. Number three, the board determines that the vital access to proposed lots 2 and 3 as specified by Chapter 41, Section 81M of the Mass General Laws does not exist on Gay Farm Way. Number four, the applicant has not provided sufficient documentation to determine legal access to Gay Street over 581 Gay Street, map 16, lot 433. Number five, the property located at 581 Gay Street, map 16, lot 433, is subject to specific restrictions as listed in the property's deed. Number six, Gay Farm Way does not have sufficient width or suitable grades to provide safe and adequate access to a public way. Number seven, the intended land division shown on the proposed A&R plan constitutes a subdivision requiring approval under the subdivision control law. With that, I make my motion to deny the acceptance of the A&R plan.
All right, do I hear a second?
A second.
Is there any discussion? Any public input?
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
So then what you put all that stuff together and boil it down? Gay Farm Way then is not a street. Would you agree with that statement or no? Or it's going to be a street when it's convenient and a street when it's, and not a street when it's not convenient.
It's not a qualified way under the
It's not a
subdivision
qualified
control
way.
law.
We have no proof before us tonight that it is a qualified way. And
So we're going
that's why we are
to,
denying.
can we use the word street or no?
I didn't use the word street.
So that's my point. It's going to be when it's convenient to be a street, it'll be a street. When it's not convenient to be a,
I've never called it a street.
It says
Mhm.
20-foot right-of-way on one of these.
Is it
On one of these,
It's-
and on the other, it doesn't really say what it is at all. Oh, it just says right-of-way.
No, but the point is to
But I
get,
mean, what it says, I don't know.
We have a motion on the table that has been seconded.
We'll have, yeah, you just, we're just having some
just-
discussion.
the discussion is, in a previous plan we filed, there was discussion about whether we need to provide a certain amount of separation between Gay Farm Way and a new proposed subdivision street. So we're just trying to cut to the chase, so to speak, right? That's all we're asking. I think you're not going to tell me. Okay? I understand.
Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion? Aye.
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 Okay, unanimous vote, 3-0. So, the subdivision, the A&R has been, has been rejected by the planning board.
Good luck, gentlemen. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7 on the agenda, review and discuss articles for consideration at the November town meeting.
All right, okay. So since your last meeting, we submitted the warrant articles to the Board of Selectmen. You had discussed and agreed at your last meeting on September 5th to submit the article on updating the accessory uses in the highway business. That has been submitted. We did also add Article 2, the update to the medical uses. We redefined Office of Healthcare Medical Center. I added an additional housekeeping item that we put those in place in case we discover any typos or errors when we're reviewing. And then the last time we met, you did not put forward any zoning amendments for to amend the FMUOD. However, since your last meeting, the Board of Selectmen met last week on September 11th and discussed and were supportive of a zoning article to add a cap to the maximum number of residential dwellings in both the FMUODs, the 6 and 7, which is Washington High Street. And they asked that you consider jointly sponsoring this article with the Board of Selectmen. Your next meeting is October 3rd, so we had put all these in for a public hearing scheduled for your next meeting on October 3rd.
Due in the end of this week, right?
The warrant closes on Monday, the 25th.
Monday.
But to get the advertisement in the newspaper, we had to send it the week prior. So it has to be in the paper for at least 2 consecutive weeks prior to a public hearing. So we did put that in for the warrant. There was also another one that came in from the University Station developers about some changes to accessory uses. However, they've since withdrawn that. So I sent that to the newspaper, but you can withdraw that article. So what we're asking you
Which one
now,
was that, accessory use?
that was they had submitted a zoning change, I believe it was early last week, to amend a special permit section that allows for the storage of permissible snow storage, calcium chloride, to be by right approval rather than a special permit. However, they've since withdrawn. We realized, I think talking to them more,
Didn't we do this
Yeah, this
last
is-
year? We did that last year too, didn't we?
That was something different. That was, yep, that was about,
That was in the Ponce watershed.
or that was in the water, resource area. So this was something different. However, after further review and discussion with the developer, the process can move more quickly if they apply for a special permit to you, rather than go through the town meeting. Even if approved at town meeting, they wouldn't get any approvals until the winter's pretty much over.
Because
So,
they need to get the approval from the Attorney General.
Attorney General, which usually takes until the beginning of the year, at least. So they've withdrawn that request. So right now, you're being asked to jointly sponsor a zoning article that would put a limited cap on the amount of residential in Washington and High Streets.
Where did we come up with the number 90?
We've done a review. Staff has kind of done a very basic analysis of all the properties in both the High Street and Washington district, and had to make a number of.
I just didn't know.
Okay.
Are you getting at it?
Oh, okay. If really kind of looking at the lot coverage requirements, the parking requirements, making assumptions about the size of the buildings, how much they could have there as a maximum, looking at the minimum setbacks. So we looked at. Okay. All right. That there would be about 150 to 120 would be the maximum possible, with many assumptions. So we felt 90 was a more reasonable number that could be possible at full build-out.
So I'm curious what will happen, well, like how much discretion is there in that number? Because what I would expect is that some people will want to amend this at town meeting and say, change it from 90 to 0 or something like that, it just.
Or anywhere in between, right?
And, or whatever. I'm just wondering how that will play out, because I know sometimes things come to town meetings, someone will try to make an amendment and then it's out of order because it's, it changes the thing too much, or I don't know.
Are we setting ourselves up for trouble?
And also, the concept itself, because I mentioned it at the TRIC meeting today, see other towns, if they had ever heard of putting a cap on number of dwelling units and
They do.
and everything like that, and no one seemed to
They do, like
be
there's.
familiar with that.
Yeah, some do it by capping it by percentage of overall. I think there's a win here. So if we go in with a cap, because I've talked about this with neighbors, and what I've found is that when I throw a number out, just out of conversation, you can see people start thinking like, oh, that seems reasonable. I think what residents seem to wonder about is like, when does it end? So they see it as like, okay, you have this one project that might come before us, then we add apartments, then in other projects. So they're wondering, when does this stop? So I think some of the opposition that we're seeing for some of the projects that come through, if they know that there's a cap, then those folks may say, oh, there's a cap, so I'm okay with this. So I think this is a way of getting good buy-in from the town and having a clear goal as to what we feel is reasonable. You bring up a good point, like what is the right number, and that's where I think that's where I'm in favor of this type of an amendment, and just picking a number that I think can go through. When I think about High Street, it seems like they have less area on High Street. I didn't look at
Topographically, it's tough because it drops off on the south side of 109.
Well, we're talking about redevelopment, so if the whole good block were to be redeveloped with housing above it,
Yeah.
then, and I assume you have figures on showing this, the land is available and all that kind of thing. And he's your microphone.
All right, so to start with, we had been here, Abby and I spoke to you at your last meeting about an article that we were working on. that we thought that the selectmen would be interested in sponsoring, and we're now asking if you would be interested in jointly sponsoring with the selectmen. That's the first step, first item I'd like to cover. The next one has to do with how the article would be developed. It would be my intention, the way the article is written, that it would be introduced to town meeting as a very specific article, not subject to change. That number, which I'm proposing at this point, be 90, would be flushed out in the hearing process before town meeting. So that's where the discussion should occur, and whatever article goes through should be a definitive article. Either you're proposing to do this or to not do this. So if the number's 90 or if it's some other number, I think that would be flushed out, and the article would be drafted in a way that would not entertain amendment at town meeting. Because keep in mind, it's right now your bylaw allows up to 50% of any of those parcels to be developed for residential use. So property owners have a right right now, a right to request a special permit. It's at your discretion, but they have the right to request it. So an article that would take away that right has to be a definitive article that those property owners can understand going into town meeting. And if it changes drastically, then it would no longer be consistent with the advertisement that those property owners had been exposed to beforehand. So I think we have to work with town council to draft it carefully so that we have something to present. And if our residents vote in favor of it, it goes forward, and if they vote against it, it doesn't. But I don't think this is something that would be altered at town meeting. I think we have to be careful there to make sure that we're proposing a definitive change, and that definitive change is voted up or down.
And is this, so if this goes through as an article for town meeting, does that include the residences that already exist within the zones?
It would. So that's how it's drafted right now. And as far as other caps, we have 3 of them right now in our current zoning bylaw. In the University Avenue Mixed-Use Overlay District, there is a cap on how many residential units can be in that zone. There's a cap of 300 by right plus 350 by right plus up to 300 by special permit. So we have that there. We also have our accessory apartment overlay district, which allows now, after a recent amendment, up to 2% of the total number of houses in town. So that number floats a little bit as our town grows, but it is a definitive cap as of today. It's based on the number of units we have. There's an actual number. I believe it's 50 as of today. We also have a section of our bylaw that allows conversion of a single family to 2-family. I believe that is also capped at 1%. So we already do this in one case by an actual number and in 2 cases by percentage.
The University Ave is really a specific project because the project and the overlay district were the same. And
It's a single applicant, but it's not a single project. Keep in mind, the Hanover development that became Gables, that was developed by a different entity. The land was originally owned by a single developer. It was developed by a different entity. It was cut off in a very specific manner. We have had other projects since then, Bridges, Lifetime Fitness. They were developed separate from the NED properties and sold to different entities. We have Brigham and Women's, similar, the Courtyard Marriott. They may be under single ownership to start with, but they're discrete independent projects. In the case of the other overlay districts, they're all in different ownership. Different projects could come forward with combination of parcels that are owned by different people or by projects that are owned by a single entity. I don't think that's a significant factor. The zoning would apply equally whether there's one owner or multiple owners.
I think the cap helps us, actually. I think it really does with projects that would come before the planning board.
I think that right now we saw, especially in the spring, we saw there was a misinterpretation of the bylaw where a lot of people thought that the existing bylaw could create huge numbers of residential units, especially on Washington Street. I know at one of the Islington Center Task Force meetings, there was a resident who predicted 600 to 700 units on Washington Street. So I prepared a calculation that was based on the most generous circumstances, assuming that the planning board granted a special permit for every parcel in that area, assuming that every one of them used underground parking and every one of them had a maximum size building on the lot, and minimum landscaping. Assuming that the planning board did not require the public amenity space that they're allowed to require under that bylaw. Taking all those items into consideration, I came up with a maximum of 149 units in the Washington Street area and 119 units in the High Street area. I don't think anywhere near that number could actually be developed. I don't think that this planning board or any configuration of a planning board would be that generous with the properties, and I don't think most developers would want to overdevelop their property in that manner. So, so that's why I'm suggesting 90 units, which is less than what's.
Adds certainty. You know, it definitely it eliminates that sort of, oh, what if it's, you know, the unknown factor. This is it puts a limit on the planning board, on development, on everything. It says here's the cap, and if everyone suddenly starts loving apartments, they could always go and change it at some point in the future.
Well,
but this is a 2/3, I assume, vote.
That's right. It would be a 2/3 vote, and if then in the future there was a reason to amend it, then that amendment would need a 2/3 vote, whether it's an amendment up or an amendment down.
And it could promote, I mean, it could, to some extent, encourage people that are developers who are sitting on the fence or something to realize that they have to come up with something. You know?
First one in.
Yeah, first one in gets it. So to that extent, a series of smaller developments might prevent the mega development, or it could flush it out into the open. But you know, it's either way, it would add a lot of predictability to things.
But it's also important to remember that all this does is gives property owners the right to apply for up to that number of units for a special permit. It still leaves all the discretion for the special permit to the planning board. It still leaves all the design standards and performance standards up to the planning board to determine that those have been met before they can approve even one residential unit.
Yeah, so if we go forward with this, I'd just like to see the language be specific as it includes existing. That probably doesn't just, we do have applicants that come in and, you know, interpret our bylaws, so I'd like to see it just be specific that way.
Right, the way we had prepared it right now and advertised it, it's the aggregate number of residential dwelling units for all projects allowed by special permit within the FMUOD 6 and 7 shall not exceed a maximum of 90 dwelling units per district. So that's a maximum total, grand total of 90 in the Washington Street, 90 in High Street.
And then
I think we could be even more specific and say including permits issued prior to the date of this, or something along those lines. We'll check with council.
Yeah, because if it does go to town meeting, it could get voted down because of misinterpretation of.
Okay.
Can I speak? Absolutely. Good evening, Nancy Hyde. To that point, Brian, when we go through the Finance Commission process, being explicit with that so they are in their narrative on their vote also helps define things for future reference. Okay. So if people look back at the warrant book, read what the Finance Commission said, so Nora can look at the legalese. If that doesn't provide a venue to be clear, the Finance Commission process, we can very specifically say to them, you know, for clarity, we want it to be known that it includes existing, permitted, or built.
No, that's good.
So there are ways to accomplish that, and I think it is important to accomplish that so there is no ambiguity.
Now the area, like where Progressive Insurance is, that's a different FMUOD, right?
Right. So that's FMUOD 3. FMUOD 3, that's Glacier Everett Drive, and FMUOD 1, which is University Avenue. They both also allow residential uses. I'm not proposing a cap in either of those zones at this time. They're a little bit more difficult to establish a specific cap because projects are far more varied there, and because they are not downtown districts. The downtown districts are the areas where I think there's a misunderstanding, confusion, and we need to be more clear so people understand what's being proposed. I think in the larger, more industrial districts, the rules are different for each district. In FMUOD 1 on University Avenue, the board can approve special permits of up to 1/3, not 50%, but 33% of a project be residential. The height limits are different, the FAR ratio is different, the setup and the way those properties will be developed is a little bit different. And the residential uses may be a necessary incentive in a different manner there. In the FMUOD 3 district along Glacier and Everett, while the whole district has the ability to apply for residential uses, it's my opinion that only a small portion of that would actually be suitable to residential uses. So we'd have to see what people come up with. But so far, the only property owner in that area that has even entertained residential uses is the Foster Brick property. And if you might remember, at a recent town meeting, I think 2 years ago, the board proposed and town meeting approved a change to that district that would allow 50% residential use or up to 100% residential use if it's age-restricted housing. And we did that to specifically encourage age-restricted housing in that district. So I would be hesitant to make any changes in that district right now. I think we should focus on the two downtowns, Washington Street and High Street. And that's how this article is proposed.
The only other thing that I would add is, as a possibility to throw on the table is, I would like to see something like this go through. If we put 90 up on high, I think it has a less chance of success. So I was even going to push that down as well as Washington. So I'd throw that on the table as like a 75-50. Because I just don't know if 90 or how many residences already exist in both. Do you have like just like a?
So in Washington Street, the residences that are approved by special permit, by FMUOD special permit, are 12 right now.
12 total, yeah.
And in High Street, there are no residences that have yet been approved by FMUOD special permit, but there are 6 residences that were approved by Upper Story Residential Overlay District special permit in the Colburn School building.
So
and
would the Colburn School count towards?
So we would have to look at that with a lawyer and determine if we could fold those in or not. If we couldn't, then I would agree that that number should at least be reduced by those 6 units. Because I did count those when I made my calculation of 119, that did include those 6 units there.
Are there, so the FMUOD 6 goes to Fairview Street, right?
It goes just short of Fairview Street. It covers the local business B district, which
So it
goes
doesn't
almost to
include
Fairview.
The apartment that's on the corner of Fairview and Washington?
No, it doesn't. On that side of the street, it stops at the Optical, Westwood Optical.
And then it's the apartment building across from Dunkin' Donuts in Washington.
Those are residential zone. They're not within the FMUOD district.
I think when we got those huge figures, the person doing the calculation was doing it for all of Washington Street under the mistaken belief that that was the FMUOD.
I think it was that, plus I think there was no calculation for parking requirements, and the assumption was that the whole property would be residential. Only 50% can be residential. If it's a single bedroom, 1-bedroom apartment, we need 1 parking space. 2-bedroom apartment would need at least 1.5 spaces. 2-bedroom condo or 3-bedroom condo or 3-bedroom apartment would probably need 2 spaces. So every time you change the configuration, you increase the parking requirements. 50% of the property would have to be commercial. The commercial properties would need a minimum of 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet, and that would change depending on what the commercial use is. So I think the person who put those calculations together was just looking at the land area and determining how many residential units could fit there, but not taking into consideration all the other performance reviews that the planning board would have to take into account in granting a special permit. And parking is the most limiting factor of all of those.
What do you guys feel about the number? Do you think you would get through?
When will we have actual discussion on whether that number should go up or down?
That would be at the public hearing. So, and that discussion, if you're jointly sponsoring this article with the selectmen, the discussion would be on both ends. So you would need to come to consensus, and the article then would be put forth for the warrant article to FinCom based on the discussions at the public hearing.
May I comment on that, please? In looking at the number, and I know Nora explained some of the logic she used. I think we should tie whatever it is, this is me speaking as one member of the Board of Selectmen, to logic so it's defensible, to allow for some discretion with the planning board to approve things in the future where it's enough that it would be worth somebody applying for, but you still maintain that discretion. So I don't want to suggest that you be too tight with the number. I think it's already been brought down fairly significantly from what it could be and what Nora explained. So I think just look at it and see, have it be defensible, have it be explainable, and then it can be articulated through the FinCom process and then to town meeting. You can say, it makes sense that we get to this number. It also is responsive to the concern that the number looked like it could be well inflated to whatever somebody's thought process is. And I think at the end of the day, we can say, we did something that the community spoke, we listened, and we did something to help everybody feel more comfortable with this zoning. So it's just so I offer that as food for thought.
Using that argument, you would say, well, then what Nora calculated should be the number. And then if you go for a lesser number, you should have to justify why you're reducing it.
I think there's more to Nora's analysis than she even presented here, because I've inquired about that. So it would imply that some properties that are less likely to become redeveloped actually get redeveloped, so that number gets skewed to a higher end when you look at it and include everything, and they probably wouldn't be. So why include that? Why have it be in that number? It just, the potential for those things to happen is.
And I think that the projected maximum is not, I think it's better to say we're going to choose a number that is appropriate for the neighborhood. It's not just like trying to figure out, well, the maximum possible that could ever happen would be 100. So let's set it at 90. I think the maximum possible is much higher. But then we could say it's, the appropriate level that's the maximum that the neighborhood would support should be some number. But then it shouldn't be so low that it's impossible to ever get anything.
That's right. And also it shouldn't be so low that the Attorney General's office determines that this is more restrictive, significantly more restrictive than the existing bylaw, and throws it out. So we need to find that happy medium. It has to be logical. It has to be related to what we believe the planning board would consider granting.
Is there a legal question here, like the last developer who was, if the number's already been used up and another developer comes along and says, I still have land here, and normally I would be able to develop it except for this cap?
So that is a legal question, and the Attorney General's office did not raise that when we put a cap on percentage of accessory apartments or percentage of conversions of single families to two families. We have been able to have caps, and other towns have done the same. So I believe that if that is equally applied to all, so everyone who applies on day one has the same opportunity, everyone who applies on day 500 has the same opportunity, then I think we're okay. We won't know for sure until if the article passes town meeting, the Attorney General weighs in on it at that point. But I believe this is consistent with what we've done in the past, and I believe it's consistent with what we did at University Station. We set a very specific cap there. While the property was owned originally by one property owner, there was nothing restricting that property owner from parceling out all of the lots, and the zoning would apply no matter who the owner was.
And that's, my impression is that that's a reasonable number, because if you look at the alternatives in the area that are the nightmare, that we don't want, those are like 4 times this. And we look at the stuff that's happening in Norwood, for example, with up there, Upland Woods and everything. I mean, I'm sure they're nice places, but it's hundreds of units being built. And that's actually also a 40B, so there's a lot of things going on there that are, by planning things out carefully here, we avoid that kind of thing. So the worst case scenario then if you think of it as a worst case would be this 90 in one place. That's not anything like the kinds of developments that people see, or the idea of a wall-to-wall.
Right,
apartment.
but 90 in one place is not an option. There's no area in the town where there are contiguous lots where you could come up with 90 units in a single development, in a single property, a continuous structure. You have to put the parcels together, and even if you put Roach Brothers and all the parcels that come down the east side of Washington Street, and you put all of those together to make a single building, you couldn't come up with 90 apartments. So I don't believe this. Yes, yes, right. So so we have 12 there now. So if 90 is the number that's settled on at the end of the public hearing, that's really 78 new apartments, not 90. So even if it is 78, that's the largest you could get. And that would require a building continuously from Roach Brothers all the way down to Clabbertree Street. I don't see that as something that the planning board would likely approve. And I also don't see all those property owners working together to achieve that, so.
And that is the big thing is that it gives everybody certainty as the maximum, but it's still going to come to the planning board. And yeah, we're not going to be like, oh, good, let's have 78 apartments in one spot here.
The article would take away none of your discretion. It would simply limit the maximum number of units you could grant.
Okay. So do we have, I think those are the town meeting articles. And,
So, if the selectmen are in favor of this, then I think, and since it's a zoning article, it's appropriate for the planning board to do all zoning articles, so I think then it should be a joint article.
We'd be fine with that.
Or either, I don't know if it has to be joint,
It
but if you.
doesn't have to be, but it certainly makes sense for planning board to be at the
Yeah.
forefront of zoning related
Absolutely,
articles, and
yeah.
we respect that. But one of the reasons I'm here is to share that we support this.
Mhm.
We think it is a good thing to do.
So all it really is, and it appears at the same place in the warrant and all, it just says sponsored by planning board, or instead it will say sponsored by planning board and board of selectmen.
Right. So an example of other articles that you did that on, the development of the police station. Do you remember there were several articles? Some were financing articles, some were zoning articles. There was a transfer of land to and from the American Legion, to from the Girl Scouts, and the board co-sponsored the zoning articles on that with the selectmen. So it's very similar to that.
all right. So the preliminary review of Tom, we talked about the street acceptance. We don't need to do any more with that tonight, right?
No.
Other business, committee reports?
Last week, staff met with Petruzziello and Trevor as the planning board chairman, and Brian were invited to attend a pre-application meeting. The developer is still negotiating with the Board of Selectmen on signing that memorandum of agreement. I thought maybe it would have been at the most recent Selectmen meeting, but it has not come forward yet. But we met to review the planning board process, the planning board's meeting schedule, and some, a reminder of issues that will need to be, further designed as the plans are developed. So that was last Thursday. That's been the only update in that pre-application working group.
So are there any other,
We have a selectman here, so is there any reason why it isn't moving along any faster, or?
We have a meeting Monday night, I expect it to be finalized then.
Oh, good, okay.
any other, the transportation thing is moving together
The
conference?
Moving Together conference is next Thursday?
Yeah, the 29th, is it the 28th or 29th?
I have it
Yeah.
on my calendar here. Yeah, it's the 28th, Thursday.
All right, well, we will report back. Were there any other committee meetings or
We had the trick meeting this morning, where we had a long and large presentation by the MOP.
MPO.
MPO, pardon me, MPO. Steve, you want to elaborate on that?
It's something they do regularly, but they're getting better at it, which is outreach to the subregion, because a lot of MPO stuff is done through the subregions, and they specifically want a lot of input from subregions as far as projects from the regions and the town and priorities. So the subregions really help set priorities within each region for what the projects are. So we have them well defined in our subregion, and but they're also there to educate members of TRIC that didn't, that aren't as familiar with the MPO as they could be, because they're new or they haven't gotten as involved. So they had a good night. They had everyone appropriately there, from someone from the TIP, from the UPWP, and then to explain things and to get input. And we're hearing, and I think they're hearing the same thing from everywhere. The first mile, last mile problem is something people are thinking about everywhere. And in our sub-region, as we pointed out, the shuttle bus or just the transportation solutions, which could be shuttle buses, but how? Because we have 4 communities, Dedham, Westwood, Norwood, Walpole, that have the same situation where you have industry along Route 1, but you have the people living in the bus going along Route 1A, and how do you get back and forth? How do you get those people to the commercial areas on Route 1, which has been a problem? Should those towns work together or what? And I know Nora is working on that and talking to the other towns, but we're making the MPO aware of that, and that's the kind of things that we want to have as far as studies and help from the MPO and various projects. And of course, emphasize the -- project in the TRIC subregion is getting the 95-93 interchange done, which like I explained quite thoroughly how it's in limbo, because it's not in the plan, it's not in the TIP, because there's no funding identified for it, and so that means it's all in a special category there of, we want to do it. I think MassDOT wants to do it, but until the money is identified.
I thought they took it out of the categories because it would.
Yeah, it's not in any category.
Right, they took it out of the categories because it'd be more than 50% of any given category. So they automatically remove them and leave it up to the state to step forward.
The state did that at one time, but then they decided,
Can't be done without federal funding.
there's no more. Yeah, the money isn't there, and that's always been a problem. Is big projects in the MPO, because that sucks all the money out of the MPO region that could go to individual towns, and this would be one of those projects.
Yep. And the last thing I have here is Westwood Day. Westwood Day is Saturday. I signed up to help out with the 5K, and I'll go see if there's any need help with the bike helmets, and encourage everybody to.
It's awesome.
Do something.
Who is organizing the volunteer?
The Recreation Department has put out that sign-up sheet. That's the best way to organize. And then once you register, you'll get instructions on where to go, where to meet, and check in when you get there.
And for anyone who has not signed up to volunteer, there are many spots still open. There's a great need for adult volunteers at Westwood Day on Saturday. So if you are available, go onto the sign-up sheet and pick a time. There's smaller slots, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. It's not all day. But all volunteers are welcome.
The planning board will not have a specific booth or anything.
You can wear your badge.
But
Yeah.
The pedestrian and bicycle safety committee will have their booth when we have a new banner. You'll be able to spot it from quite a distance. It's really nice. And as usual, we'll be giving out free bicycle helmets to children.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So with that, do I?
The minutes. So we had draft minutes from your last meeting in September that Janice worked very hard on, if anyone had a chance to
I couldn't
review
get into
them.
them.
You didn't, oh,
I couldn't get in.
did anyone read them?
I read them.
Okay, oh good,
come across
sorry.
them.
Oh. Dave read
I
them?
read them.
I thought, I read
Are they
everything on
accurate?
Okay.
They're accurate.
Okay.
Now let's vote.
Okay.
Anybody want to make a motion to approve the,
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
and I think the second,
I'll second the motion.
all those in
Okay.
favor?
Aye.
Okay. The
Thank
minutes-
you.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.